Donald Scott's eyes widen as Uma, the Sheliak negotiator, offers him a cup of milky fluid from her torso. "Adult humans drink milk? Here, try mine," she says, her alien beauty captivating him despite the tense atmosphere of the Nexus 7 conference room. The human diplomat coughs violently, his throat burning from the station's unfamiliar air. He eyes the cup warily, aware that accepting could alter the course of this crucial interspecies summit. Earth's future trade relations with the newly discovered Sheliak race hang in the balance. Uma's six-fingered hand extends the cup closer. "It has medicinal property," she explains, her melodious voice tinged with concern. The other Sheliak negotiators watch intently, their tall, slender forms motionless. Donald's gaze darts between Uma's mesmerizing silver eyes and the cup. The stakes are high. One wrong move could jeopardize everything. But his cough worsens, leaving him desperate for relief. With a deep breath, he takes the cup. The room falls silent as he raises it to his lips. The liquid is warm, sweet, and oddly comforting. As it soothes his throat, Donald notices the shocked expressions of the Sheliak delegation. Uma's silver skin flushes a deeper shade. I should explain," she stammers. "Among our people, sharing this secretion is an intimate act, reserved for partners or family." The implications hit Donald like a gravitational surge. He's inadvertently crossed a cultural line, potentially compromising the entire negotiation. The human delegation shifts uncomfortably, unprepared for this turn of events. Yet, as Donald locks eyes with Uma, he feels an unexpected connection forming. Her alien features, the graceful curve of her head crest, the subtle iridescence of her skin, suddenly seem alluring in a way he can't explain. The conference room buzzes with murmurs. Sheliak negotiators confer in hushed tones, their elaborate robes rustling. Human diplomats frantically tap on data pads, seeking guidance on this unforeseen scenario. Donald's mind races. He must find a way to salvage the situation, to turn this potential disaster into a diplomatic advantage. But Uma's presence distracts him, her every movement drawing his attention. As the leader of Earth's delegation, Donald knows the future of human-Sheliak relations now rests on his next move. He sets the cup down, acutely aware of every eye in the room upon him. The taste of Uma's secretion lingers on his tongue, a constant reminder of the intimate act he's unwittingly participated in. Uma steps closer, her scent, an exotic blend of alien flora, filling Donald's senses. "I hope this doesn't complicate matters," she says softly, her words meant only for him. Donald straightens his uniform, mind whirling with diplomatic strategies and unexpected emotions. He must navigate this cultural minefield carefully, balancing the needs of Earth with the growing attraction he feels towards Uma. As he prepares to address the room, Donald realizes that this summit has become far more than a simple trade negotiation. It's now a complex dance of cultures, misunderstandings, and unexpected connections, one that could reshape the future of both species. Donald cleared his throat, the lingering sweetness of Uma's secretion still on his tongue. He addressed the room, his voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions within him. "I appreciate the Sheliak's gesture of goodwill," he began, carefully choosing his words. "It seems we have much to learn about each other's cultures." Before he could continue, Ambassador Sarah Howard strode into the conference room, her face a mask of professional concern. "Mr. Scott, a word, please," she said, gesturing towards the door. Donald excused himself, following the ambassador into a nearby alcove. The moment the door closed behind them, Howard turned to him, her eyes narrowing. "What exactly happened in there, Scott?" she demanded, her voice low and tense. Donald explained the situation, detailing Uma's offer and his acceptance of the medicinal drink. As he spoke, Howard's expression shifted from concern to thoughtful calculation. "This could be either a diplomatic disaster or an unprecedented opportunity," she mused. "We need to handle this carefully. I'm calling an emergency meeting of our delegation." Within minutes, the human diplomats gathered in a secure conference room. Voices rose and fell as they debated the implications of Donald's actions. Dr. Eliza Wong, the station's chief medical officer, arrived partway through the discussion, her data pad clutched tightly in her hand. Ambassador, Dr. Wong interrupted, her eyes wide with excitement. I've just completed a preliminary scan of Mr. Scott. The results are remarkable. As Dr. Wong shared her findings, the room fell silent. Donald listened in amazement as she detailed the unexpected effects of Uma's secretion on his physiology. Increased energy levels, improved cognitive function, enhanced cellular regeneration, Dr. Wong listed, her voice filled with awe. This could revolutionize human medicine. Ambassador Howard's eyes gleamed with the possibilities. This changes everything, she declared. We need to push for a comprehensive biological exchange program. As the human delegation strategized, a similar scene unfolded in the Sheliak quarters. Uma stood before Elder Zax, her posture proud despite the elder's stern gaze. You shared our sacred fluid with an alien. Zax's multi-tone voice resonated with disapproval. Explain yourself. Uma's silver skin shimmered as she spoke, her words measured and calm. The human was in distress. I acted out of compassion, as our teachings instruct. The Sheliak delegation erupted into debate. Some praised Uma's initiative, seeing it as a step towards greater interspecies understanding. Others, like the conservative diplomat Krell, warned of the dangers of sharing their biological secrets. As arguments raged around her, Uma's thoughts drifted to Donald. The memory of his lips on the cup, the wonder in his eyes as he tasted her secretion. It stirred something within her, a feeling both alien and exhilarating. Back in the human sector, Donald paced his quarters, his mind racing. The effects of Uma's secretion coursed through his body, sharpening his senses and quickening his thoughts. He felt alive, invigorated in a way he'd never experienced before. A chime at his door startled him from his reverie. He opened it to find Uma standing there, her silver eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. May I come in? She asked, her melodious voice sending a shiver down Donald's spine. As Uma entered, Donald became acutely aware of her presence, the graceful sweep of her head crest, the subtle shimmer of her skin, the exotic scent that seemed to surround her. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken tension. I wanted to explain, Uma began, her voice soft. Among my people, sharing our secretion is intimate. It's an act reserved for potential mates or close family. Donald's heart raced at her words. I had no idea, he stammered, suddenly understanding the weight of what had transpired between them. Uma stepped closer, her silver eyes searching his face. But I don't regret it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There's something about you, Donald Scott. Something that calls to me in a way I've never experienced before. As they stood there, the air thick with unspoken possibilities, the station's comm system crackled to life. Attention all delegates, Captain Marcus Holt's voice boomed. Please report to the main conference room immediately. We have a situation that requires everyone's immediate attention. Donald and Uma exchanged a look, both recognizing that their private moment had come to an end. As they made their way to the conference room, Donald couldn't help but wonder what new challenges awaited them, and how this unexpected connection with Uma would shape the events to come. Donald and Uma hurried towards the main conference room, their earlier moment of intimacy giving way to the urgency of Captain Holt's summons. As they entered, they found the room already buzzing with activity. Delegates from both species huddled in small groups, their voices a mix of concern and speculation. Ambassador Howard caught Donald's eye and motioned him over. Scott, we need to talk, she said, her voice low. Word of your encounter with Uma has spread faster than we anticipated. Before Donald could respond, Dr. Wong burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. She made a beeline for Donald, her datapad clutched tightly in her hand. Mr. Scott, the results of your latest scan are remarkable, she said, her eyes wide. The Sheliak secretion has had profound effects on your physiology. We need to set up a proper research protocol immediately. As Dr. Wong outlined her findings, Donald felt a strange tingling sensation coursing through his body. He flexed his hand, noticing a newfound strength and precision in his movements. The room seemed clearer, sharper, as if his senses had been heightened. Captain Holt approached, his military bearing evident in every step. "Scott, a word," he said, guiding Donald to a quiet corner. "These enhancements, they could have significant implications for our defense capabilities. I've already contacted Earth about the potential applications." Donald's mind raced, trying to process the rapid-fire developments. He glanced at Uma, who stood across the room with her fellow Sheliak delegates. Her silver eyes met his, filled with a mix of concern and something deeper, more personal. Elder Zax's multi-tone voice cut through the chatter. "Delegates, please take your seats. We have much to discuss." As the room settled, a new figure entered. Tall and imposing, even for a Sheliak, he carried himself with an air of authority that immediately commanded attention. "Commander Vex," Elder Zax announced, "welcome to Nexus 7. Uma stiffened at the name, her reaction not lost on Donald. He watched as she exchanged a tense glance with the newly arrived Sheliak officer. Elder Zax continued, "In light of recent events, we've organized a formal dinner to discuss the implications of our cultural exchange." The dinner itself was a tense affair. Donald found himself seated between Ambassador Howard and Dr. Wong, with Uma directly across from him. Commander Vex sat at the head of the table, his piercing gaze sweeping over the assembled delegates. As servers brought out dishes of both human and Sheliak cuisine, Dr. Wong stood to present her findings. The Sheliak secretion contains unique proteins and enzymes that dramatically enhance human cellular regeneration and neuroplasticity, she explained, her voice filled with barely held back excitement. The room erupted into murmurs. Donald caught snippets of conversation. Medical breakthrough, military applications, ethical concerns. Commander Vex leaned forward, his interest piqued. "These enhancements," he said, his voice a low rumble, "they could revolutionize our joint military capabilities. I propose we establish a research program immediately." Uma's head crest flattened, a clear sign of distress. "Commander," she interjected, "we must consider the ethical implications. Our secretion is sacred, not a weapon to be exploited." The dinner devolved into heated debate. Donald watched as factions formed before his eyes. Ambassador Howard argued for diplomatic caution, while Captain Holt pushed for military cooperation. Uma and her supporters advocated for purely scientific collaboration, while Vex and his allies saw the potential for a new era of Sheliak human military dominance. As the arguments raged, Donald felt a surge of energy course through him. His mind raced, processing the complex political and ethical arguments with startling clarity. He stood, drawing all eyes to him. "We need to approach this carefully," he began, surprised by the strength and conviction in his voice. "The potential benefits are immense, but so are the risks. We can't rush into this without fully understanding the consequences." Uma's eyes met his, filled with gratitude and something more. The connection between them seemed to pulse with newfound intensity. Suddenly, a commotion outside the conference room caught everyone's attention. Through the windows, they could see a group of Sheliak gathering, their voices raised in protest. "It's Krell," Uma said, her voice tight with concern. "He and his conservative faction are demanding we cease all research into Sheliak biology." As the protesters' chants grew louder, Donald realized that what had started as a simple cultural misunderstanding had exploded into a complex web of scientific discovery, military ambition, and interspecies politics. And at the center of it all stood he and Uma, their unexpected connection now inextricably linked to the fate of their species. Commander Vex rose, his imposing figure casting a shadow across the table. "This situation requires immediate action," he declared. "We cannot allow a few dissidents to impede progress." Donald felt Uma's distress from across the table. As Vex moved toward the door, clearly intent on confronting the protesters, Donald knew he had to act. The future of Sheliak-human relations hung in the balance, and the next few moments could determine the course of galactic history. Without hesitation, Donald rose from his seat and moved to intercept the commander. "Commander Vex," Donald said, his voice carrying a newfound authority that surprised even him. "I understand your concern, but confronting the protesters directly could escalate the situation. Perhaps we should consider a more diplomatic approach." Vex turned to face Donald, his silver eyes narrowing. And what would you suggest, human? Before Donald could respond, a commotion erupted outside the conference room. The chanting of the protesters grew louder, and the sound of breaking glass echoed through the corridor. Captain Holt immediately tapped his communicator. Holt. Security teams to the diplomatic sector now, he barked. Deploy the AI drones for crowd control. As the situation outside intensified, Dr. Wong approached Donald, her eyes wide with concern. Mr. Scott, I need to run more tests immediately. Your physical changes are progressing at an unprecedented rate. Donald nodded, suddenly aware of a strange tingling sensation coursing through his body. He flexed his hand, marveling at the newfound strength he felt coursing through his muscles. Ambassador Howard stepped forward, her face a mask of commitment. We need to address this situation head-on. Donald, you're at the center of this controversy. Your words might carry weight with both sides. As the delegates debated their next move, Uma approached Donald, her silver skin shimmering with anxiety. Donald, she said softly, there's something you need to know about the secretion. Can we speak privately? Before Donald could respond, the door to the conference room burst open. Krell, the leader of the conservative Sheliak faction, stormed in, flanked by several agitated supporters. This madness must end, Krell bellowed, his multi-tone voice reverberating through the room. You humans seek to exploit our sacred biology for your own gain. We demand an immediate halt to all research. Captain Holt stepped forward, his hand resting on the holster of his sidearm. This is a restricted area. You need to leave immediately. As tensions rose, Donald felt a surge of energy course through him. Without thinking, he moved with lightning speed, positioning himself between the two groups. Everyone please, he said, his voice carrying a strange, compelling resonance. We need to calm down and discuss this rationally. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on Donald. Even Krell seemed taken aback by the human's sudden display of enhanced abilities. Uma seized the moment of quiet to speak. Krell, please listen. What's happening here is unprecedented, but it could lead to a new era of understanding between our species. As Uma spoke, Donald noticed Dr. Eliza Wong furiously tapping on her datapad, her eyes widening with each new reading. She caught his gaze and mouthed, "We need to talk." Suddenly, the station's alert system blared to life. Captain Holt's communicator crackled with an urgent message. Sir, we're detecting an unidentified vessel approaching at high speed. It doesn't match any known configurations in our database. The room erupted into chaos once more. Commander Vex strode to the nearest console, his fingers flying over the controls. It's not Sheliak, he announced, his voice tense, and it's not following any recognized approach vectors. Ambassador Howard turned to Captain Holt, her face pale. Could it be the Vorax? The mention of the rival alien species sent a ripple of fear through the Sheliak delegates. Elder Zack stepped forward, his usually calm demeanor shaken. If it is the Vorax, we must put aside our differences. The threat they pose to both our peoples is far greater than any internal disagreements. As the delegates grappled with this new development, Donald felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Uma looking at him intently. Donald, she whispered, what's happening to you? It's not supposed to be permanent, but there's a possibility, a rare possibility. Before she could finish, Dr. Wong interrupted. Mr. Scott, I need you in the medical bay immediately. The changes to your DNA, they're accelerating. Donald looked from Uma to Dr. Wong, then back to the chaotic scene in the conference room. The protesters outside, the approaching unknown ship, his own rapidly changing body. Everything was spiraling out of control. Captain Holt's voice cut through the noise. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. As alarms blared and delegates scrambled, Donald made a decision. He turned to Uma, his eyes locking with hers. Whatever's happening to me, whatever's coming for us, we're in this together. Now let's go find out what's really going on with my transformation. With that, Donald, Uma, and Dr. Wong rushed from the conference room, leaving behind a storm of diplomatic chaos as Nexus 7 braced for a potential confrontation that could reshape the future of human-Sheliak relations and perhaps the entire galaxy. As Donald, Uma, and Dr. Wong rushed from the conference room, the station's alarms blared with increasing urgency. The corridors of Nexus 7 bustled with activity as crew members and delegates scrambled to their assigned positions. Captain Holt's voice echoed through the station's comm system. All hands, prepare for potential hostile contact. Unidentified vessel approaching at high speed. Donald felt a surge of adrenaline course through his body, his enhanced senses heightening his awareness of every detail around him. The trio arrived at the medical bay, where Dr. Wong immediately began preparing her equipment. "Mr. Scott, please lie down on the examination table," and she instructed, her fingers flying over the controls of a complex scanner. As Donald complied, Uma stood nearby, her silver eyes filled with concern. "Donald," she began, her voice low and urgent, "there's something you need to know about the secretion's effects." Before she could finish, Captain Holt burst into the medical bay, his face grim. "Scott, we need you on the defense team. Your enhanced abilities could be crucial if this situation escalates." Donald sat up, torn between his duty and his burning curiosity about Uma's unfinished revelation. "Captain, There's no time," Holt interrupted. "The unidentified ship is almost upon us. We need all hands on deck." With a reluctant nod, Donald rose from the examination table. He exchanged a meaningful glance with Uma before following Captain Holt out of the medical bay. As they rushed towards the command center, Holt briefed Donald on the situation. "We've been trying to establish communication with the incoming vessel, but they're not responding to our hails." They entered the bustling command center, where Ambassador Howard was hunched over a communications console. "This is Ambassador Elaine Howard of Nexus 7. Please identify yourself and state your intentions," she repeated, her voice calm but tinged with frustration. Suddenly, the main view screen flickered to life, revealing a striking alien visage. The being before them was tall and insectoid, with an iridescent exoskeleton and large compound eyes that seemed to shimmer with intelligence. "Greetings, inhabitants of Nexus 7, the alien's voice resonated through the speakers, its mandibles clicking as it spoke. "I am Ambassador Zikthar of the Vorax Confederation. We come in peace to observe the ongoing negotiations between humans and Sheliacs." A ripple of surprise ran through the command center. Captain Holt stepped forward, his posture rigid. "Ambassador Zikthar, I am Captain Marcus Holt. Your sudden appearance has caused quite a stir. We would appreciate advance notice for future visits." Zikthar's compound eyes seemed to flash with amusement. "Our apologies, Captain. The Vorax prefer direct approaches. We request permission to dock and send a delegation to your station." As Ambassador Howard engaged in diplomatic pleasantries with Zikthar, Commander Vex entered the command center, his silver skin gleaming under the harsh lights. He surveyed the scene before approaching Donald and Captain Holt. "This is an opportunity," Vex said, his voice low. "We should present a united front. I propose a joint human-Sheliac welcoming committee for the Vorax." Captain Holt nodded slowly. "Agreed. Scott, I want you on that committee. Your unique position as a human with Sheliac enhancements makes you an ideal representative." Donald felt a mix of pride and apprehension at the captain's words. As the command center buzzed with preparations for the Vorax arrival, he noticed Dr. Xander Voss approaching, a determined look on his face. "Mr. Scott," Dr. Voss said, his voice urgent, "I need to speak with you immediately. It's about your transformation." Donald followed Dr. Voss to a quiet corner of the command center. The geneticist's eyes gleamed with excitement as he spoke. "Your physiology could be the key to defending against potential Vorax bioweapons. I need to run a series of tests immediately." Donald hesitated, thinking of Uma and the unfinished conversation in the medical bay. But the weight of his responsibility to humanity pressed upon him. "All right, Dr. Voss, let's do it." As Donald followed Dr. Voss out of the command center, he caught sight of Uma entering with a group of Sheliac delegates. Their eyes met across the room, and Donald felt a strange tingling sensation in his mind. For a brief moment, he could have sworn he heard Uma's voice in his thoughts, filled with concern and something deeper, more intimate. The sensation passed as quickly as it had come, leaving Donald shaken and confused. He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts as he and Dr. Voss made their way to the research lab. Inside the lab, Dr. Voss wasted no time in beginning his tests. As Donald underwent scans and provided samples, the doctor's excitement grew palpable. "This is extraordinary," Voss muttered, his eyes glued to a screen displaying Donald's neural activity. "The celiac secretion hasn't just enhanced your physical abilities. It's altered your brain chemistry in ways I've never seen before." Donald's mind raced, remembering the strange connection he'd felt with Uma moments earlier. "Dr. Voss, is it possible that the secretion could have given me some kind of telepathic ability?" Voss looked up sharply, his eyes wide. "Telepathy? That's unprecedented, but given what we're seeing here, not impossible. We need to investigate this further." As Voss prepared another round of tests, Donald's communicator chirped. Captain Holt's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Scott, get to docking bay 3 immediately. The Vorax delegation is about to arrive." Donald looked at Dr. Voss apologetically. The geneticist nodded in understanding. "Go, but we're not done here. The implications of your transformation could change everything." As Donald rushed toward the docking bay, his mind swirled with questions. The Vorax, his transformation, the strange connection with Uma, it all seemed to be building towards something monumental. And as he arrived at the docking bay, joining the assembled human and celiac representatives, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of a new era in interspecies relations. The airlock hissed open, and the first Vorax stepped onto Nexus 7. Donald steeled himself, knowing that his actions in the coming moments could shape the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Galaxy. The Vorax delegation emerged from the airlock, their insectoid forms towering over the assembled representatives. Ambassador Zekthar led the group, compound eyes scanning the welcoming committee with unnerving intensity. Donald felt a strange, tingling sensation in his mind as the Vorax approached. He glanced at Uma, who stood nearby with the celiac delegates, and saw a flicker of recognition in her silver eyes. Their gazes locked, and for a brief moment, Donald sensed a wave of concern emanating from her. Ambassador Howard stepped forward to greet the Vorax. "Welcome to Nexus 7, Ambassador Zekthar. We hope your stay will be productive and enlightening for all parties involved." As the diplomatic pleasantries unfolded, Donald noticed Dr. Xander Voss hovering at the edge of the gathering, his eyes darting between Donald and the Vorax delegation. The geneticist's excitement was palpable, even from a distance. Once the formalities concluded, Captain Holt approached Donald. "Scott, I need you to join me for a private meeting with Dr. Voss. He's made some interesting proposals regarding your condition." Donald nodded, his curiosity piqued. As they made their way to a nearby conference room, he caught sight of Uma being ushered away by Elder Zax, her expression troubled. Inside the conference room, Dr. Voss could barely contain his enthusiasm. "Captain Mr. Scott, I believe we have an unprecedented opportunity before us," he began, his words tumbling out in a rush. "The changes in Mr. Scott's physiology, combined with Uma's unique celiac biology, could be the key to groundbreaking advancements in interspecies relations, and possibly even defense against potential Vorax bioweapons." Captain Holt's expression remained neutral. "What exactly are you proposing, Doctor?" Voss took a deep breath. "I want to conduct a series of experiments using both Mr. Scott and Uma as test subjects. We could explore the full potential of human celiac hybrid biology." Donald felt a jolt of surprise. "Experiments? What kind of experiments?" Before Voss could answer, Ambassador Howard entered the room, her face grave. "I've just been briefed on Dr. Voss's proposal," she said, addressing the group. "While I understand the potential benefits, we must proceed with caution. This is a delicate matter both scientifically and diplomatically." Captain Holt nodded in agreement. "Ambassador, what's your recommendation?" Howard's gaze settled on Donald. "We need full consent from both Mr. Scott and Uma before we can even consider moving forward. Mr. Scott, are you willing to participate in these experiments?" Donald hesitated, his mind racing. The memory of the strange, telepathic connection he'd experienced with Uma earlier flashed through his thoughts. He thought of the potential benefits for humanity, the possibility of bridging the gap between species, and the looming threat of the Vorax. I need some time to think about it, he said finally. Ambassador Howard nodded. Of course. Take the night to consider your decision. We'll reconvene in the morning. As the meeting adjourned, Donald found himself walking the corridors of Nexus 7, lost in thought. The station hummed with activity around him, but he barely noticed the bustle of crew members and delegates. He made his way to the observation deck, seeking solitude. As he gazed out at the stars, the weight of the decision before him pressed heavily on his mind. The sound of the door sliding open broke his reverie. Uma entered, her silver eyes finding his in the dim light. Donald, she said softly, I sensed your turmoil. I hope I'm not intruding. He shook his head, grateful for her presence. Not at all. I guess our connection is growing stronger. Uma moved to stand beside him, her gaze fixed on the starfield beyond. Elder Zax informed me of Dr. Voss's proposal, she said, her voice tinged with a mix of emotions Donald couldn't quite decipher. It's, a lot to process. Donald turned to face her. Uma, I'm considering volunteering for the experiments, but I wanted to know how you feel about it. This affects you just as much as it does me. Uma was silent for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. The potential benefits for both our species are undeniable, and yet the idea of being a test subject. She trailed off, then met Donald's gaze with restored dedication. But if you're willing to do this, then so am I. Donald felt a surge of admiration for her courage. Without thinking, he reached out and took her hand. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through him, intensifying their telepathic connection. Suddenly, a vivid image flashed through their shared consciousness, a distant planet, its surface a swirling mix of silver and blue. Uma gasped, her grip on Donald's hand tightening. That planet, she said, her voice filled with awe. It's an ancient Sheliak colony, one we thought was lost ages ago. How did we see that? Before Donald could respond, the observation deck door slid open once more. Captain Holt stood in the entrance, his expression urgent. Scott, Uma, we need you both in the command center immediately, he said, his voice tense. The Vorax delegation is demanding information about some kind of shared vision, and Krell's faction is threatening to sabotage Dr. Voss's lab. Things are escalating quickly. Donald and Uma exchanged a look of shared grit. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As they followed Captain Holt out of the observation deck, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of a discovery that could change the course of human-Sheliak relations forever. Donald and Uma followed Captain Holt out of the observation deck, their minds still reeling from the shared vision of the lost Sheliak colony. As they hurried through the corridors of Nexus 7, the station's alarms began to blare, casting an eerie red glow over the metallic walls. Upon entering the command center, they were met with a scene of controlled chaos. Ambassador Zekthar and his Vorax delegation stood in a tight cluster, their mandibles clicking rapidly as they conversed in hushed tones. On the opposite side of the room, Krell and his faction of conservative Sheliaks argued heatedly with Elder Zax. Captain Holt cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. We need to address the situation at hand. Ambassador Zekthar, you mentioned a shared vision? The Vorax ambassador stepped forward, his compound eyes fixed on Donald and Uma. Our species possesses limited telepathic abilities. We sensed a powerful psychic surge emanating from this station, specifically from these two individuals. He gestured towards Donald and Uma with a segmented appendage. Donald felt a chill run down his spine as the Vorax's gaze bore into him. Uma shifted closer to him, her silver skin gleaming under the harsh lights of the command center. Before anyone could respond, Dr. Voss burst into the room, his lab coat askew and his eyes wild with excitement. Captain, I've made a breakthrough, he exclaimed, waving a datapad. The latest test results show unprecedented regenerative properties in the human-Sheliak hybrid DNA. A hush fell over the room as the implications of Dr. Voss's words sank in. Ambassador Howard was the first to break the silence, her voice filled with scarcely controlled excitement. Dr. Voss, are you saying that this discovery could lead to medical advancements? The geneticist nodded vigorously. Not just medical advancements, Ambassador. The potential applications are staggering. We could be looking at enhanced longevity, rapid healing, even resistance to certain forms of radiation. As Dr. Voss continued to explain his findings, Donald noticed the Vorax delegation growing increasingly agitated. Ambassador Zakhtar stepped forward, his voice a low hiss. We demand access to this research data. The Vorax Confederation is willing to offer an exchange of advanced technology for full disclosure of your findings. Captain Holt's expression hardened. Ambassador, I appreciate your offer, but this research is highly sensitive. We can't simply hand it over without proper protocols in place. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches as the Vorax and human delegations faced off. Uma placed a hand on Donald's arm, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through their shared connection. He turned to her, seeing the concern in her silver eyes. Donald, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the heated arguments around them. Something's happening to us. I can see different wavelengths of light, things I've never been able to perceive before. He nodded, realizing that he too had been experiencing changes. His skin felt different, more resilient. I know. It's like our bodies are adapting, becoming something new. Their quiet exchange was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance to the command center. Krell and his followers had broken away from their argument with Elder Zax and were now advancing towards Dr. Voss, their faces contorted with rage. This abomination must end, Krell shouted, his silver skin flushed with anger. We will not allow our species to be corrupted by human genetics. Captain Holt quickly interposed himself between Krell's group and Dr. Voss. Stand down immediately, he ordered, his hand moving to the phaser at his hip. Any acts of violence on this station will be met with severe consequences. As the situation teetered on the brink of chaos, a new alert sounded throughout the command center. A young ensign at the communication station called out, Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Sheliak homeworld. Elder Zax pushed through the crowd, his ancient face lined with worry. He listened intently as the message played, his expression growing more grave by the second. The Sheliak High Council has declared this situation a matter of national security, he announced, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. They are dispatching a warship, the Stellar Aegis, to secure the research data and potentially extract all Sheliak personnel from Nexus 7. The news hit the room like a shockwave. Captain Holt immediately began issuing orders to heighten the station's defenses, while Ambassador Howard huddled with her aides, furiously discussing diplomatic options. In the midst of the growing storm, Donald and Uma found themselves at the eye of the hurricane. Dr. Voss approached them, his eyes gleaming with scientific fervor. We need to accelerate our research, he said urgently. I want to conduct a new experiment, one that could stabilize your hybrid physiology and potentially enhance your telepathic connection. Donald hesitated, glancing at Uma. The weight of the decision pressed down on them both. The fate of human-Sheliak relations, perhaps even the balance of power in the galaxy, seemed to hang in the balance. Uma met his gaze, her silver eyes filled with persistence. We have to try, she said softly. If there's even a chance this could prevent a conflict. Donald nodded, feeling a mix of fear and drive coursing through him. All right, Dr. Voss, he said, turning to the geneticist. We'll do it. What's the next step? As Dr. Voss began to outline the experimental procedure, alarms blared once again throughout the station. Captain Holt's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. All personnel, report to your designated security stations. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Donald and Uma exchanged a look of shared purpose as they followed Dr. Voss out of the command center. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, their unique bond potentially holding the key to averting a looming interstellar crisis. As they hurried through the corridors of Nexus 7, Donald and Uma could feel the weight of their decision pressing down upon them. Dr. Voss led them to his lab, his excitement palpable as he prepared the equipment for the experimental procedure. As Donald lay down on the examination table, He felt Uma's hand slip into his, their shared connection humming with nervous energy. "Are you ready?" Dr. Voss asked, hovering over them with a hypospray. Donald nodded, his throat too dry to speak. Uma squeezed his hand in reassurance. The procedure was intense, a whirlwind of sensations as Dr. Voss administered a series of carefully calibrated genetic treatments. Donald felt as if his entire body was being rewritten at a cellular level. Through it all, Uma's presence anchored him, their mental link growing stronger with each passing moment. Hours later, as the final treatment concluded, Donald sat up slowly, his head spinning. He blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. Everything seemed different, sharper, more vivid. "Donald," Uma gasped, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "Your skin." He looked down at his arms, stunned to see a faint bioluminescent sheen rippling across his skin, reminiscent of celiac physiology. Uma reached out to touch him, and he noticed that her hair had taken on a more human-like texture, falling in soft waves around her face. Dr. Voss was practically bouncing with excitement as he ran a scanner over them both. "Remarkable," he exclaimed. "The hybridization process has accelerated beyond our wildest expectations. Your physiologies are adapting, integrating aspects of both species." Before they could fully process these changes, the lab door slid open, revealing Dr. Wong. Her expression was a mix of concern and fascination as she took in the scene before her. "Dr. Voss," she said, her voice stern, "I insist on conducting a thorough medical evaluation immediately. We need to ensure their continued health and well-being." As Dr. Wong began her examination, Captain Holt's voice came over the intercom once again, his tone grave. "Attention all personnel. The situation has escalated. A Sheliak warship, the Stellar Aegis, has taken up position near the station. All non-essential personnel are to remain in their quarters until further notice." Donald and Uma exchanged worried glances. Their transformation was now impossible to hide, and its implications would ripple through the delicate political landscape of Nexus 7. No sooner had Dr. Wong completed her initial tests than the lab door opened again. This time, it was Ambassador Howard who entered, followed by a stern-looking man in a crisp military uniform. "Donald, Uma," Ambassador Howard said, her voice tight with tension, "I'd like you to meet Admiral Thorne. He's been sent by Earth Command to assess the situation." Admiral Thorne's sharp eyes scanned Donald and Uma, taking in their altered appearances with a mix of curiosity and calculation. "So," he said, his voice clipped, "these are our human Sheliak hybrids. Impressive work, Dr. Voss. I can see why Earth Command is so interested in your research." The Admiral's presence added a new layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. As he began to question Dr. Voss about the details of the hybridization process, Donald felt a sudden spike of alarm through his mental link with Uma. "Donald," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "something's wrong. I can sense hostility, danger." He nodded slightly, understanding her meaning. Their enhanced abilities were already proving useful, allowing them to perceive threats others might miss. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Captain Holt's voice came over the intercom once more, this time with unmistakable urgency. "Security alert! Unauthorized intruders detected in Residential Sector 3. All security personnel report to your stations immediately." Admiral Thorne's hand moved to his sidearm, his expression hardening. "What's going on, Captain?" he demanded over the comlink. "Sir," Captain Holt replied, his voice strained, "we have reports of Vorax agents attempting to infiltrate the station. Their target appears to be the hybrids." Donald felt a surge of protective instinct wash over him. Without thinking, he reached out and took Uma's hand. As their fingers intertwined, he felt their mental connection strengthen, becoming a near-tangible force. "We need to move," Donald said, surprising himself with the authority in his voice. "We can help stop this." Admiral Thorne looked skeptical, but Ambassador Howard nodded. "They're right," she said. "Their abilities could be crucial in thwarting this attack." As they rushed out of the lab and into the chaos-filled corridors of Nexus 7, Donald and Uma found themselves at the center of a storm that threatened to engulf not just the station, but the future of human-Sheliak relations. Their transformation had opened up new possibilities, but it had also painted targets on their backs. Now they would have to use their newfound abilities not just to defend themselves, but to protect the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build. The corridors ahead were filled with the sounds of struggle and the flashing of emergency lights. Donald and Uma moved in perfect synchronization, their enhanced senses and telepathic link allowing them to anticipate threats before they materialized. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of Vorax intruders, their alien features twisted with perseverance. The battle that followed was unlike anything Donald had ever experienced. He and Uma moved as one, their actions perfectly coordinated through their mental link. Their enhanced strength and reflexes allowed them to hold their own against the physically imposing Vorax, while their ability to communicate without words gave them a crucial tactical advantage. As the last of the Vorax assailants fell, Donald turned to Uma, both of them breathing heavily. The realization of what they had just accomplished began to sink in. They were no longer just diplomats or test subjects. They had become something more. A perfect fusion of human and Shellyak, with abilities that could change the course of interstellar relations. Admiral Thorne approached them, his expression a mix of awe and calculation. "Impressive," he said, his eyes gleaming with interest. "Very impressive indeed. I think it's time we had a serious discussion about the future of this hybrid program." As they made their way back to the command center, Donald and Uma knew that their actions had just opened a new chapter in the ongoing saga of Nexus 7. The question now was whether their unique abilities would be seen as a bridge between species or a threat to be contained. The answer to that question would shape not just their own futures, but the future of human-Shellyak relations for generations to come. The urgency of their situation became even more apparent as they hurried back to the command center. Upon arrival, they found the room buzzing with activity. Captain Holt and Admiral Thorne had established a joint command post, their faces grim as they pored over holographic displays of the station's layout. Dr. Voss and Dr. Wong huddled in a corner, deep in discussion about potential biological enhancements for the hybrids. "Donald, Uma," Captain Holt called out as they entered. "We need your unique abilities now more than ever. The bioweapon threat has escalated, and we're initiating a full station lockdown." Admiral Thorne stepped forward, his posture rigid. "We've devised a plan to neutralize the threat, but it's risky. It involves you two directly." Donald felt Uma's hand tighten around his, their mental link humming with a mix of anxiety and drive. "We're ready," he said, speaking for both of them. Dr. Voss approached, holding a pair of small devices. "These are biomonitors," he explained, attaching one to Donald's wrist and the other to Uma's. "They'll allow us to track your physiological changes and provide real-time data as you search for the bioweapon." As the final preparations were made, Donald noticed Commander Vex and Elder Zax engaged in an intense conversation with a group of Shellyak conservatives. The atmosphere was tense, with raised voices and agitated gestures. "That's Krell's faction," Uma whispered, her enhanced hearing picking up fragments of the heated exchange. "They're pushing for more aggressive action." Before Donald could respond, a new figure entered the command center. She moved with the fluid grace of a Shellyak, but her uniform marked her as a military specialist. "Specialist Lyra," Admiral Thorne announced, sent by the Stellar Aegis to assess the bioweapon threat. Lyra's arrival added a palpable layer of tension to the room. Her eyes, a deep obsidian, scanned the assembled group before settling on Donald and Uma. "These are the hybrids?" she asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Yes," Dr. Wong replied, stepping forward, "and they may be our best hope for locating and neutralizing the bioweapon." With final instructions received and equipment checked, Donald and Uma prepared to begin their search. As they approached the command center's exit, Donald felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through his body. He looked down to see his skin pulsing with a soft, blue-green light. Uma gasped softly, "Donald, your bioluminescence." He nodded, understanding instinctively. "It's responding to the energy signatures around us. This could help us detect anomalies as we search the station." They stepped into the corridor, immediately aware of the eerie silence that had fallen over Nexus 7. The lockdown had cleared the hallways, leaving only the faint hum of life support systems and the pulsing of emergency lights. As they moved through the station, Donald and Uma fell into a natural rhythm, their movements perfectly synchronized. They communicated silently through their mental link, covering ground with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Uma's enhanced vision proved invaluable, allowing her to detect minute traces of unfamiliar compounds in the air. There, she whispered, pointing to a barely visible residue on a nearby wall. Signs of recent Vorax activity. No sooner had she spoken than a group of shadowy figures emerged from a side passage. Vorax agents, their alien features contorted with menace, moved to surround them. Donald felt adrenaline surge through his system as he and Uma fell into defensive stances. The ensuing confrontation was a blur of motion, their enhanced reflexes and strength allowing them to hold their own against the physically imposing Vorax. In the heat of the battle, Donald felt a strange tingling sensation in his skin. Without fully understanding how, he focused his energy and released a localized electromagnetic pulse. The Vorax's weapons and communication devices sparked and died, giving Donald and Uma the advantage they needed to subdue their attackers. As the last Vorax fell unconscious, Uma turned to Donald, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "How did you do that?" Donald shook his head, still processing what had happened. "I'm not sure. It just happened." Their moment of victory was short-lived as Captain Holt's voice crackled over their comm units. "Donald, Uma, we have a situation. Krell's faction has released a small amount of the bioweapon in a sealed-off section of the station. We need you to double your efforts." The news sent a chill through them both. As they resumed their search with renewed urgency, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The station's fate, and perhaps the future of human-Shellyak relations, now rested squarely on their shoulders. With every step, their bodies continued to change and adapt. Uma's hair took on an almost ethereal quality, seeming to float and shift with unseen currents. Donald's bioluminescence grew more pronounced, pulsing in complex patterns that seemed to map the energy flows of the station itself. As they approached a sealed bulkhead, Uma suddenly staggered, her hand flying to her temple. "Donald," she gasped, "I can sense them. Krell and his followers. They're just beyond this door, and they're preparing to release the full force of the bioweapon." Donald placed his hand on the bulkhead, feeling the faint vibrations of activity beyond. He met Uma's gaze, seeing his own persistence reflected in her silver eyes. Whatever lay on the other side of that door, they would face it together. With a shared nod of understanding, Donald activated the door's emergency override. As the bulkhead slowly began to slide open, they steeled themselves for the confrontation that awaited them, knowing that the next few moments could determine the fate of Nexus 7 and beyond. The course of interstellar relations for generations to come. As the bulkhead slid open, Donald and Uma were met with a scene of chaos. Krell and his followers were gathered around a cylindrical device, their movements frantic as they prepared to release the bioweapon. The room was bathed in an eerie, pulsating light emanating from the device. Donald's enhanced senses immediately picked up on the danger. "Uma, we need to stop them now!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the din. They sprang into action, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. Uma's silver eyes flashed as she unleashed a burst of psychic energy, momentarily disorienting several of Krell's supporters. Donald, meanwhile, focused his newfound electromagnetic abilities, sending out a targeted pulse that disrupted the bioweapon device's control systems. Krell, his features contorted with rage, lunged at Donald. "You abominations will not stop us," he snarled. Donald sidestepped the attack, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to move with inhuman speed. Uma was at his side in an instant, her hands glowing with an otherworldly energy as she engaged another group of attackers. The fight was intense, with both sides pushing their abilities to the limit. Donald and Uma's mental link allowed them to coordinate their movements flawlessly, anticipating each other's needs without a word spoken. As the battle raged on, Donald noticed a change in the bioweapon device. Despite his electromagnetic interference, it was still active, its pulsations growing more erratic. "Uma, the device!" he called out, gesturing towards the increasingly unstable cylinder. Uma nodded, understanding instantly. She broke away from her current engagement, racing towards the device. Her hands moved in a blur over its surface. her enhanced intelligence allowing her to decipher its complex mechanisms in seconds. "Donald, I need your help," she called. "We need to contain the energy before it releases." Donald fought his way to her side, his skin now glowing brightly with bioluminescent patterns. Together, they placed their hands on the device, channeling their combined abilities into it. The cylinder shuddered and sparked, the energy within threatening to break free. In that moment of crisis, Donald felt a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. His body seemed to resonate with the energy of the device, and instinctively, he knew what to do. With a tremendous effort, he began to absorb the volatile energy into himself. Uma's eyes widened in alarm. "Donald, no, it's too dangerous." But Donald couldn't stop. He felt the bioweapon's energy coursing through his body, burning like liquid fire in his veins. His vision blurred, the world around him fading into a haze of pain and swirling colors. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Uma's face, her silver eyes filled with fear and desperation. Then darkness claimed him. Uma caught Donald as he collapsed, cradling his unconscious form in her arms. "Donald," she cried out, her voice thick with emotion. As she held him, Uma's body began to respond to the crisis in an unexpected way. A viscous, luminescent fluid started seeping from her pores, pulsating with an energy that seemed to match the rhythms of Donald's failing body. The room fell silent, the fighting forgotten as both human and Sheliak stared in awe at the scene unfolding before them. Uma, oblivious to their attention, focused all her energy on Donald, willing him to survive. The silence was broken by the arrival of Dr. Wong and a team of medical personnel, their footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. Dr. Wong's eyes widened as she took in the sight of Uma and Donald, the strange luminescent fluid now coating both their bodies. "Extraordinary," Dr. Wong breathed, quickly snapping into action. She pulled out a portable scanner, running it over Donald's prone form and Uma's glowing skin. "This secretion, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. We need to get samples immediately." As Dr. Wong and her team worked feverishly to collect and analyze the mysterious fluid, Captain Holt arrived with a security detail. He quickly assessed the situation, his face grim. "Establish a quarantine zone immediately," he ordered. "No one in or out without my express permission." Admiral Thorne, who had followed close behind, nodded in agreement. His earlier aggression had been replaced by a look of concern and curiosity. "Give them whatever they need," he instructed, gesturing towards Dr. Wong and her team. Uma barely registered the activity around her, her entire being focused on Donald. She maintained constant physical contact, allowing her secretion to flow freely onto his skin. To her relief and amazement, she could sense a change in him. His breathing, which had been shallow and erratic, began to steady. The angry red marks on his skin, evidence of the bioweapon's effect, started to fade. "Dr. Wong," Uma called out, her voice trembling with hope. "I think it's working. He's stabilizing." Dr. Wong rushed over, her scanner whirring as she passed it over Donald's body. Her eyes widened as she read the results. "This is incredible," she muttered. "The secretion seems to be neutralizing the bioweapon's effects at a cellular level. We've never seen anything like this before." As the hours passed, Donald's condition continued to improve. Uma refused to leave his side, her body continuously producing the life-saving fluid. The room had transformed from a battlefield into a makeshift medical bay, with Dr. Wong and her team working tirelessly to understand the miraculous substance. Specialist Lyra, the Sheliak weapons expert, approached Dr. Wong with a datapad in hand. "Doctor," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I have information about the bioweapon's composition that might be relevant to your analysis." Dr. Wong looked up from her work, her eyes bright with interest. "Show me," she said, gesturing for Lyra to join her. As the two experts huddled over the data, their collaboration bridging the gap between human and Sheliak scientific knowledge, a new sense of possibility filled the air. The crisis that had threatened to tear Nexus 7 apart was now becoming a catalyst for unprecedented cooperation. In the midst of this flurry of activity, Donald began to stir. His eyes fluttered open, immediately seeking out Uma's face. "Uma," he whispered, his voice weak but filled with gratitude. "You saved me." Uma's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she squeezed his hand. "We saved each other," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. As Donald and Uma shared this moment of reunion, their mental link hummed with an intensity they had never experienced before. It was as if the barrier between their minds had thinned, allowing thoughts and emotions to flow more freely than ever. Dr. Wong, observing their interaction, made a note on her datapad. The implications of this enhanced connection were yet another fascinating aspect of the hybrid's evolving biology that would need to be studied. "Dr. Wong," came the urgent voice of one of her assistants. "You need to see this." "This?" she said urgently. Dr. Wong rushed to her assistant's side, her eyes widening as she took in the data on the screen. "These readings, they're off the charts," she murmured, her fingers flying over the console as she analyzed the information. As the medical team worked feverishly, Captain Holt made a decision. "We need to move them to a more secure location," he announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Dr. Wong, prepare to transfer Donald and Uma to the specialized containment unit in the medical bay." Within minutes, a flurry of activity erupted as medical staff and security personnel coordinated the delicate transfer. Donald, still weak but conscious, was carefully placed on a hover stretcher. Uma refused to break physical contact, her body continuing to produce the mysterious, luminescent fluid. As they moved through the corridors of Nexus 7, curious onlookers gathered, whispering and pointing at the strange sight. The security detail, led by a stern-faced officer, kept the crowd at bay. Upon reaching the medical bay, Donald and Uma were ushered into a state-of-the-art containment unit. The room hummed with advanced technology, its walls lined with sensors and environmental controls designed to adapt to the rapidly changing needs of the hybrids. Dr. Wong wasted no time in setting up her equipment, her movements precise and efficient. "We need to monitor every aspect of their physiology," she instructed her team. "Any change, no matter how small, could be significant." Uma sat beside Donald's bed, her silver eyes never leaving his face. The luminescent fluid continued to seep from her pores, coating both their bodies in a soft, pulsating glow. Dr. Voss, the Sheliak scientist, approached with a non-invasive scanning device. "With your permission," he said, his voice a low hum, "I would like to analyze the properties of this secretion." Uma nodded, too focused on Donald to speak. Dr. Voss carefully collected a sample, his movements slow and deliberate. As the hours passed, the containment unit became a hub of scientific activity. Dr. Wong and Dr. Voss worked side by side, their earlier tensions forgotten in the face of this unprecedented scientific discovery. "The fluid contains complex proteins and enzymes," Dr. Voss announced, his normally impassive features betraying a hint of excitement. "It's unlike anything in our databases, human or Sheliak." Dr. Wong nodded, her eyes fixed on her own readings. "And look at this," she said, gesturing to a holographic display of Donald's cellular structure. "His body is adapting at an incredible rate. It's as if the hybridization process is accelerating." Outside the containment unit, the political ramifications of these developments were already being felt. Ambassador Howard paced the corridor, deep in conversation with Elder Zax. "This could be an opportunity," Howard said, his voice low but intense. "A joint research initiative focused on hybrid biology could strengthen our relations immeasurably." Elder Zax's compound eyes flickered, a sign of deep thought in Sheliak body language. "Your proposal has merit," he conceded, "but we must proceed with caution. The implications of this research could be far-reaching." Their discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Vex, his posture rigid with barely suppressed agitation. "I've contacted the Sheliak High Council," he announced without preamble. "I've requested permission to secure genetic samples for our military scientists." Ambassador Howard's face darkened. "That's premature, Commander," he said, his tone sharp. "We haven't even begun to understand what we're dealing with here." As tensions rose outside, Donald's condition took a sudden turn within the containment unit. His body began to emit pulses of electromagnetic energy, causing nearby equipment to spark and malfunction. "Everyone back," Dr. Wong shouted, her voice rising above the sudden cacophony of alarms. "We need to stabilize the equipment." Uma leaned closer to Donald, her hands gripping his tightly. Through their mental link, she could sense his confusion and fear. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I'm here. We'll figure this out together." Dr. Wong, her face illuminated by the flickering screens, turned to her team. "This must be a defensive mechanism," she theorized, her mind racing. "A response to the bioweapon exposure. We need to adapt our equipment to function in the presence of these energy pulses." As the medical team scrambled to adjust their technology, Uma felt a strange sensation rippling through her own body. Patches of her skin began to glow, with a bioluminescence similar to Donald's, and her senses sharpened to an almost painful degree. "Dr. Wong," she called out, her voice strained. "Something's happening to me too." Dr. Voss, who had been observing from a safe distance, stepped forward. "Fascinating," he murmured. "It appears their physiologies are converging. We may be witnessing the birth of a new subspecies." The news of these developments spread quickly through Nexus 7, reaching the ears of various factions. Ambassador Zekthar of the Vorax delegation saw an opportunity and requested an urgent meeting with Captain Holt. "We offer advanced medical technology," Zekthar said, his voice a sibilant whisper, "in exchange for access to the hybrid research data." Captain Holt's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "That's a generous offer, Ambassador," he replied carefully, "but I'm afraid I can't make that decision unilaterally. This situation has implications far beyond Nexus 7. As diplomatic negotiations continued in hushed tones throughout the station, a new arrival caused a stir in the medical bay. Dr. Lana Reeves, a renowned human xenobiologist, strode into the containment unit, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Dr. Wong," she said, extending her hand, "I came as soon as I heard. I've brought some equipment that might help us understand what's happening here." Dr. Wong's relief was palpable. "Dr. Reeves, thank goodness. We could certainly use your expertise." As Dr. Reeves set up her equipment, Donald stirred on the bed. His eyes opened, glowing faintly with an inner light. "Uma," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "What's happening to us?" Uma squeezed his hand, her own eyes shimmering with a similar glow. "We're changing," she said softly, "but we're changing together." Dr. Reeves approached the bed, her scanner humming as she passed it over Donald's body. Suddenly, she gasped, her eyes widening as she stared at the readout. "This is incredible," she breathed. "The hybrid DNA is self-replicating, evolving at an accelerated rate. It's adapting to environmental stimuli in real time." The implications of this discovery hung heavy in the air. Captain Holt, who had been observing from the doorway, stepped forward. "Doctor," he said, his voice grave, "what are the risks of this evolution spreading beyond Donald and Uma?" Dr. Reeves looked up, her expression a mixture of excitement and concern. "At this point, Captain, I honestly don't know. We're in uncharted territory here." Captain Holt nodded, his decision made. "Implement stricter quarantine protocols immediately," he ordered. "No one enters or leaves this unit without my express permission." As the medical team rushed to comply with the new orders, Donald sat up slowly, his movements cautious. He raised his hand, staring at it intently. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered, and a nearby data pad flew into his outstretched palm. I can feel the electromagnetic field," he said, his voice filled with wonder and a hint of fear. "It's like they're an extension of my body." Uma watched him, her silver eyes wide. "Donald," she said softly, "you're not alone in this. We'll learn to control these changes together." As Donald and Uma grappled with their evolving abilities, the containment unit hummed with activity. Scientists from multiple species worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the face of this unprecedented situation. Outside, the political landscape of Nexus 7 shifted and realigned, alliances forming and breaking as the implications of the hybrid biology became clear. And beyond the station, unbeknownst to its inhabitants, a fleet of unknown ships hurtled through space, their destination set. Nexus 7 and the remarkable hybrids it housed were about to face a new and potentially deadly challenge. As the unknown ships drew closer, Nexus 7's long-range sensors began to gather more detailed information. Captain Holt's eyes widened as he studied the incoming data. "They're Kartha vessels," he announced, his voice a mix of surprise and concern. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Ambassador Howard leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "The Kartha? But they've been reclusive for decades. Why would they come here now?" Captain Holt's response was cut short by a series of urgent beeps from the command console. "We're being hailed," the communications officer reported. "On screen," Holt ordered, straightening his uniform. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the striking features of a Kartha female. Her iridescent scales shimmered under the soft light of her ship, and her large, multifaceted eyes regarded the Nexus 7 crew with keen interest. "I am Ambassador Zilra of the Kartha Confederation," she began, her voice melodious yet authoritative. "We come in peace, seeking to observe and study the remarkable human Sheliak hybridization experiment taking place on your station." Captain Holt exchanged a quick glance with Ambassador Howard before responding. "Ambassador Zilra, I am Captain Holt of Nexus 7. Your arrival is unexpected. How did you come to know about our research?" Silra's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. "Captain, the Kartha have always been more observant than most realize. We've been monitoring your progress from afar, and recent developments have piqued our scientific curiosity. We request permission to send a small team aboard to study the hybrids directly." The request sent a ripple of tension through the command center. Admiral Thorne, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. "Captain, I advise caution. The sudden appearance of an advanced alien fleet at our doorstep could be construed as a threat." Ambassador Howard countered swiftly. "Or it could be an unprecedented opportunity for peaceful first contact with a species known for their biotechnological prowess. Think of the potential benefits, Admiral." Captain Holt raised a hand to quiet the brewing argument. "Ambassador Zilra, your request is significant. I'll need time to consult with my senior staff before making a decision. In the meantime, please maintain your current position." Zilra inclined her head gracefully. "Of course, Captain. We await your response." As the view screen went dark, Captain Holt turned to his team. "We need to act quickly. Dr. Wong, what's the status of our hybrids?" Dr. Wong's face appeared on a nearby screen, her expression taut with concern. "We've developed a temporary solution, a specialized containment field to suppress the more volatile aspects of their evolving physiology. It's been implemented around their medical bay, but—" She hesitated. "But what, Doctor?" Holt pressed. "Donald's condition is becoming increasingly unstable. The electromagnetic pulses he's emitting are growing stronger. We're doing our best to manage it, but I'm not sure how long the containment field will hold." Captain Holt nodded grimly. "Keep me updated. Now, regarding the Kartha request, thoughts?" The ensuing debate was heated but brief. In the end, Captain Holt made his decision. "We'll allow a small Kartha delegation aboard, under strict security protocols. Ambassador Howard, please inform Ambassador Zilra. Admiral Thorne, I want security teams on high alert. Commander Vex, position the Stellar Aegis to defend the station if necessary." As the team dispersed to carry out their orders, alarms blared from the medical bay. Dr. Wong's voice came through, urgent and strained. "Captain, Donald's condition is critical. The containment field is failing." In the medical bay, chaos reigned. Equipment sparked and sputtered as waves of electromagnetic energy pulsed from Donald's prone form. Uma, her silver eyes wide with willpower, pushed past the medical staff. "I need to be with him," she insisted, her voice steady despite the panic around her. Dr. Wong moved to stop her. "Uma, it's too dangerous. The containment field—" But Uma was already stepping through the flickering barrier. As she approached Donald's bed, the erratic energy pulses seemed to calm. Dr. Wong watched in amazement as the readings on her instruments began to stabilize. "Incredible," she murmured. "Their bond. It's acting as a stabilizing force." As Uma took Donald's hand, his eyes fluttered open. They glowed with an inner light, matching the soft luminescence of Uma's skin. "Uma," he whispered, his voice weak but filled with relief. Before Dr. Wong could fully process this new development, the medical bay doors slid open. A group of Kartha scientists entered, led by a tall, elegant figure who could only be Dr. Zevna. Fascinating, Dr. Zevna said, her multifaceted eyes taking in the scene before her. We arrived just in time, it seems. Perhaps we can be of assistance? Dr. Wong hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Any help would be appreciated, Dr. Zevna. We're in uncharted territory here. As the Kartha team set up their advanced bioscanning equipment, Donald stirred again, his brow furrowed in concentration, and suddenly the air around him shimmered. A holographic image sprang to life, floating above his bed. The assembled scientists watched in awe as the image took shape, revealing a vivid scene of a lush alien world. Uma gasped, recognizing it immediately. The lost Sheliak colony, she breathed. Donald, you're projecting our shared vision. Dr. Zevna's scales rippled with excitement. Astonishing. He's developed the ability to project his thoughts and memories as interactive holograms. This could revolutionize interspecies communication. As the implications of this new ability sank in, Commander Vex burst into the medical bay, his compound eyes fixed on the holographic image. That colony, he said, his voice tight with barely held back excitement. I recognize those coordinates. We must inform the Sheliak High Council immediately. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches as the various factions present realized the potential impact of this discovery. Dr. Wong, sensing the shift in atmosphere, stepped forward. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, she said firmly. Our priority right now is stabilizing Donald and Uma's condition and understanding the full extent of their new abilities. Dr. Zevna nodded in agreement, her scales shimmering thoughtfully. Indeed, and to that end, I have a proposal that might interest you all. With your permission, we could use Kartha biotechnology to create more human Sheliak hybrids. A larger sample size would provide invaluable data and potentially lead to groundbreaking advancements for all our species. The room fell silent as the weight of this suggestion settled over everyone present. The silence was broken by the sound of the medical bay doors opening once again. A tall, imposing human figure strode in, his crisp uniform marking him as a high-ranking Earth official. I'm afraid any such decision will have to wait, the newcomer announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. I am Counselor Drell, sent by Earth's government to assess this situation and determine humanity's official stance on these hybridization experiments. As all eyes turned to the counselor, Donald and Uma exchanged a look of apprehension. Their hands clasped tighter, their unique bond humming with shared anxiety and perseverance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not just as individuals, but as the living embodiment of a new era of interspecies cooperation and scientific discovery. The fate of their relationship, and perhaps the future of galactic diplomacy itself, now hung in the balance as Nexus 7 found itself at the center of a rapidly unfolding interstellar drama. The medical bay hummed with tension as Counselor Drell's arrival added another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. Donald and Uma, still clasping hands, exchanged a worried glance as the various factions present began to argue over the next course of action. Dr. Wong, sensing the need for immediate focus on the hybrid's well-being, stepped forward. Gentlemen, while I appreciate the gravity of this situation, we must prioritize Donald and Uma's health. Their condition remains unstable, and we need to act quickly. Counselor Drell nodded, his stern expression softening slightly. Of course, Doctor. Please proceed with your assessment. As Dr. Wong and Dr. Reeves began a series of tests on the hybrids, Donald suddenly winced, his grip on Uma's hand tightening. I can hear your thoughts, he whispered, his eyes wide with surprise. Uma's silver eyes locked onto his. I can feel your emotions, she replied, her voice filled with wonder. It's like we're connected on a deeper level. Dr. Wong's eyebrows shot up as she observed the readings on her scanner. Fascinating. It appears their mental link has intensified. We need to explore this further. Over the next few hours, the medical team conducted a series of experiments to test the extent of Donald and Uma's telepathic abilities. As they progressed, the hybrid's connection grew stronger, allowing them to share not just thoughts and emotions, but also sensory experiences. During one particularly intense test, Donald's body suddenly went rigid. His skin began to shimmer, taking on a texture reminiscent of Sheliak physiology. Simultaneously, Uma's hair started to change, adopting more human-like characteristics. Their eyes shifted color, blending human and Shellyak features in a striking display of their hybrid nature. Alarms blared as the medical equipment registered the rapid changes. Dr. Wong's face paled. "We're losing containment. Their hybrid DNA is spreading throughout their bodies at an accelerated rate." Captain Holt, who had been observing from the sidelines, immediately took charge. "Initiate emergency containment protocols. Evacuate all non-essential personnel from this section immediately." As the medical bay erupted into chaos, Donald's electromagnetic abilities flared, interfering with the force fields meant to contain them. Uma's body began to pulse with bioluminescent light, disrupting the sensors and casting eerie shadows across the room. Dr. Zevna, the Kartha scientist, pushed forward. "Captain Holt, I believe I can help. The Kartha possess advanced biotechnology that could stabilize their condition." Admiral Thorne bristled at the suggestion. "We can't allow an unknown species access to such valuable subjects. The risk is too great." While the debate raged on, Donald and Uma's condition continued to deteriorate. Energy pulses emanated from their bodies, growing stronger with each passing moment. The very structure of the medical bay groaned under the strain. Dr. Wong, her face etched with grit, made a snap decision. "We're out of options. Dr. Zevna, proceed with your stabilization procedure." The Kartha team sprang into action, setting up their equipment with practiced efficiency. As they worked, Donald and Uma's mental link reached a new level of intensity. Suddenly, a vivid holographic projection filled the room, visible to all present. The projection showed a series of possible futures, peaceful scenes of interspecies cooperation interspersed with visions of conflict and chaos. Counselor Drell watched intently, his mind already racing with the potential implications for Earth's interstellar policy. As the Kartha stabilization procedure progressed, a strange milk-like substance began to seep from Donald and Uma's pores. Dr. Zevna, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity, quickly collected samples for analysis. "Incredible," she murmured, examining the fluid. "This substance contains a complex mixture of human and Shellyak genetic material. It could be a natural byproduct of the hybridization process." Dr. Voss, who had been monitoring the procedure closely, stepped forward to examine the samples. "This could be a mechanism for passing on hybrid traits," he theorized, his voice tight with excitement. "The implications are staggering." As the debate over the significance of this new discovery began to heat up, Donald and Uma stirred. Their bodies, while visibly altered, had stabilized. They opened their eyes, now a striking blend of human and Shellyak features, and looked at each other with a newfound intensity. "I can feel you," Donald said, his voice filled with awe. "Not just your thoughts, but everything." Uma nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "We're connected in a way I never thought possible. It's beautiful." As the hybrids adjusted to their new reality, the various factions on Nexus 7 began to position themselves. Ambassador Howard saw an opportunity for groundbreaking diplomatic initiatives, while Admiral Thorne couldn't help but consider the military applications of such abilities. Amidst the growing tension, the medical bay doors slid open once more. A tall, striking woman with piercing green eyes strode in, her presence immediately commanding attention. "Dr. Alara Voss," she announced, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on the hybrids. "I believe you've been expecting me." Dr. Xander Voss stiffened at the sight of his estranged sister, setting the stage for a new chapter in the unfolding drama on Nexus 7. As Donald and Uma watched the newcomer approach, they sensed that their journey of discovery was far from finished. As Dr. Alara Voss approached the hybrids, the tension in the medical bay shifted. Donald and Uma, still clasping hands, watched her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The newcomer's presence seemed to catalyze the chaotic energy that had been building in the room. "Dr. Voss," Captain Holt acknowledged, his voice tight, "your timing is impeccable. We're in the midst of a rather delicate situation." Dr. Alara's eyes narrowed as she took in the scene before her. "So I see. Perhaps we should begin with a full briefing on the hybrid's current condition?" As Dr. Wong launched into a detailed explanation of Donald and Uma's transformation, Dr. Xander Voss stepped forward, his face a mask of professional detachment. Sister, I wasn't aware you'd been called in on this case. The implications of human-Shellyak hybridization extend far beyond Nexus 7, Xander, Ilara replied coolly. Earth's scientific community is intensely interested. Their tense exchange was interrupted by a sudden gasp from Uma. The hybrid skin rippled with bioluminescence, casting eerie patterns across the medical bay. Donald's eyes widened in response, his body tensing as if bracing against an unseen force. What's happening? Counselor Drell demanded, his earlier composure cracking. Dr. Wong rushed to the hybrid's side, her scanner whirring. Their physiologies are still stabilizing. These fluctuations are to be expected, but... Her voice trailed off as she stared at the readings on her device. A viscous, opalescent fluid began to seep from Donald and Uma's pores, pooling on the bed beneath them. Dr. Zevna leaned in, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with fascination. Extraordinary! This substance appears to be a byproduct of their hybridization process. As the Kartha scientist moved to collect a sample, Donald's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. Wait, he rasped, his voice strained. We can control it. Uma nodded, her silver eyes locked on Donald's. It's part of us. We can feel it, shape it. The assembled scientists watched in awe as the milky fluid began to move, coalescing into intricate patterns on the hybrid's skin before being reabsorbed. Dr. Ilara Voss stepped closer, her earlier professional detachment replaced by intense curiosity. Fascinating, she murmured. Their bond seems to have evolved beyond simple telepathy. They're exhibiting a level of physiological synchronization I've never seen before. Over the next few hours, the medical bay buzzed with activity as the scientific team ran a battery of tests on Donald and Uma. The hybrid's ability to control the production and properties of their unique fluid became the focal point of the investigation. Dr. Wong, her face etched with a mixture of excitement and concern, addressed the group. The preliminary analysis of this hybrid fluid is, well, frankly, it's revolutionary. The regenerative properties alone could redefine modern medicine. Ambassador Howard, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. The diplomatic implications of this discovery are staggering. We need to consider how we'll approach sharing this information with our allies and our rivals. Admiral Thorne's eyes narrowed at this. Sharing, we need to secure this technology for Earth first. The military applications alone are not our primary concern, Captain Holt interjected firmly. Our focus right now should be on understanding and stabilizing Donald and Uma's condition. As the debate over the future of hybrid research intensified, Donald and Uma found themselves at the center of a storm they barely understood. Their deepening bond allowed them to communicate silently, sharing their fears and hopes without words. We need to do something, Uma projected, her thoughts tinged with purpose. This isn't just about us anymore. Donald nodded imperceptibly, his mind already racing with possibilities. Maybe we can use this connection, this ability to help others. Their silent exchange was interrupted by Dr. Wong's voice, cutting through the heated arguments around them. I have a proposal, she announced, her tone resolute. We have a critically ill patient on Nexus 7, an engineer with a rare genetic disorder. I propose we use a controlled dose of the hybrid fluid to treat him. The room erupted into chaos as the various factions argued over the ethics and implications of such an experiment. Counselor Drell raised his hands, calling for order. This decision cannot be made lightly. We need to consider all possible outcomes. As the debate raged on, Donald and Uma exchanged a meaningful look. They had made their decision. Whatever came next, they would face it together, their unique bond serving as both a shield against the unknown and a bridge to a future neither of them could have imagined. The medical bay doors slid open once more, revealing Commander Vex. The Shellyak officer's compound eyes scanned the room before settling on Captain Holt. Captain, we need to talk. It's about the lost colony. The atmosphere in the room shifted once again, the promise of ancient secrets adding yet another layer to the already complex situation. As Donald and Uma watched the unfolding drama, they sensed that their journey was nowhere near the end. The hybrid fluid coursing through their veins held the potential to reshape the future of human-Shellyak relations, and perhaps the entire galaxy. Their hands intertwined, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one, a living embodiment of the potential for cooperation and understanding between their two species. The arrival of Commander Vex with news of the lost colony set in motion a flurry of activity on Nexus 7. Within hours, a specially modified shuttle was prepared for the expedition, its systems enhanced to accommodate the unique abilities of Donald and Uma. As the shuttle lifted off from the station's docking bay, Donald and Uma found themselves seated at the center of the craft, surrounded by a mix of human and Shellyak experts. Dr. Ilara Voss stood nearby, her eyes fixed on the monitoring equipment as the hybrids began to interface with the ship's systems. "Initiating neural link," Donald announced, his voice calm despite the tension in the air. Uma nodded, her silver eyes closing as she synchronized her consciousness with her partners. Captain Holt watched from the pilot's seat as the shuttle's displays came to life with unprecedented clarity. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Their sensory input is providing us with data we've never had access to before." As the shuttle entered deep space, Donald suddenly stiffened, his body rigid. "Something's wrong," Uma said, her voice tight with concern. "Donald's electromagnetic abilities are spiking." Without warning, powerful energy pulses began emanating from Donald's body, causing the shuttle's systems to flicker and waver. Alarms blared as the ship's electronic equipment struggled to cope with the unexpected interference. Uma, acting on pure instinct, placed her hands on Donald's arms. Her skin began to glow with an intense bioluminescence, and a new type of fluid seeped from her pores. As she spread the viscous substance over Donald's skin, his energy emissions stabilized, and the ship's systems returned to normal. Dr. Ilara Voss sprang into action, collecting samples of the mysterious fluid. "Fascinating," she muttered, her earlier professional detachment replaced by genuine excitement. "This compound appears to be absorbing and redirecting the electromagnetic energy." As the journey progressed, the expedition encountered an uncharted asteroid field. The debris loomed before them, a maze of deadly obstacles that threatened to tear the shuttle apart. "Evasive maneuvers," Captain Holt ordered, his hands tightening on the controls. But before he could act, Donald and Uma's eyes snapped open in perfect synchronization. Their hands moved in unison across the shuttle's interface, guiding the ship through the treacherous field with impossible precision. The human and Shellyak crew members watched in awe as the hybrids navigated the asteroid field, their shared consciousness and enhanced reflexes allowing them to anticipate and avoid each threat with milliseconds to spare. As they emerged from the debris field unscathed, a palpable sense of unity settled over the crew. The demonstration of Donald and Uma's abilities had bridged the gap between human and Shellyak, fostering a newfound respect and cooperation. Halfway to their destination, the shuttle's long-range sensors lit up with activity. "Captain," the sensor officer called out, "we're detecting an anomalous energy signature from a nearby star system." Captain Holt frowned, studying the readouts. "It doesn't match any known patterns. Could it be related to the lost colony?" As the captain deliberated, Uma suddenly gasped, her body going rigid. Her eyes, usually silver, now glowed with an otherworldly light. "I see it," she whispered. "An ancient outpost on a distant planet. It's calling to us." Without hesitation, Captain Holt made his decision. "Alter course. We're investigating this energy signature." As the shuttle changed direction, the crew's excitement was palpable. They were venturing into the unknown, guided by the extraordinary abilities of their hybrid companions. Hours later, as they approached the source of the energy signature, a collective gasp echoed through the shuttle. Before them loomed a massive derelict space station, its design an impossible fusion of human and Shellyak architecture. That's not possible," Dr. Zandervoss stammered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "The station's design suggests a level of cooperation between our species that predates official first contact by centuries." As the shuttle drew closer to the mysterious structure, Donald and Uma began to change once more. Their skin rippled, developing a layer of bioluminescent scales that pulsed in rhythm with the station's energy emissions. Their eyes shifted, adapting to perceive new wavelengths of light. "Look," Uma said, pointing to the station's hull. "There are patterns, markings we couldn't see before." Donald nodded, his enhanced vision tracing the hidden glyphs. "They're showing us how to dock safely." Under the hybrid's guidance, Captain Holt maneuvered the shuttle towards a previously invisible airlock. As they approached, dormant systems across the station began to flicker to life, responding to the presence of Donald and Uma's hybrid biology. The expedition team prepared to board the station, with Donald and Uma taking point. As they stepped into the airlock, holographic displays materialized around them, presenting data in a strange amalgamation of human and Shellyak scripts. Dr. Ilara Voss, her earlier detachment completely forgotten, rushed to examine the station's computer systems. Her fingers flew over the alien interface, decoding the hybrid language with remarkable speed. Suddenly, she froze, her face pale with shock. This can't be right," she whispered. "According to these records, this station was part of a controlled human Shellyak hybridization experiment, an experiment that took place centuries before our species officially met." The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the team. As they grappled with this paradigm-shifting information, Donald and Uma felt a pull deeper into the station. They moved in perfect synchronization, their bioluminescence pulsing with increasing intensity. The couple stopped before a sealed chamber that seemed to resonate with their hybrid energy. Driven by an instinct they couldn't explain, Donald and Uma began to synchronize their bioluminescent patterns, their light dancing in complex, interwoven sequences. With a low hum, the chamber's door slid open, revealing a sight that left the expedition team speechless. Inside, row upon row of cryogenic pods stretched into the distance, each containing a hibernating individual at various stages of human Shellyak integration. As the team stared in awe at the ancient hybrids, Donald and Uma's connection to the station grew stronger. Information from the facility's databanks began to flow into their minds, fragments of advanced technologies and scientific knowledge that had been lost for centuries. Their bodies began to change once more, their hybrid traits becoming more pronounced. New abilities blossomed within them, hinting at the untapped potential of their unique biology. Suddenly, the shuttle's communication system crackled to life. "Captain Holt," the sensor officer's voice was tight with urgency. "Multiple ships approaching. Vorax design. They'll be within range in less than an hour." The captain's face hardened as he processed this new threat. "All right, people. We need to secure our findings and prepare for possible hostile contact. Donald, Uma, see if you can access the station's defensive systems." As the expedition team raced to protect their groundbreaking discoveries, Donald and Uma delved deeper into the station's ancient systems. The fate of the hybrid station, its hibernating occupants, and the future of human-Shellyak relations now rested in their hands. With the Vorax fleet approaching and time running out, the true test of Donald and Uma's evolving abilities was about to begin. With the Vorax fleet rapidly closing in, Captain Holt's voice cut through the tension. "Initiate emergency protocols. Donald, Uma, see what you can do with the station's defenses." The hybrid couple nodded in unison, their eyes glowing with renewed purpose. As they interfaced with the ancient systems, their bodies began to pulse with intricate bioluminescent patterns. The station's dormant systems responded to their touch, awakening after centuries of slumber. Dr. Ilara Voss, her fingers flying across the alien interface, suddenly gasped. "Captain, I found something crucial. The station's archives contain detailed information about the Vorax. It seems the ancient hybrids encountered them before and developed specific countermeasures." She quickly relayed the information to Donald and Uma, who absorbed it with preternatural speed. Their hybrid biology allowed them to process and implement the long-forgotten defense strategies with inhuman efficiency. As the Vorax ships entered weapons range, the hybrid station came alive. Energy shields blossomed around the structure, shimmering with otherworldly power. Hidden weapon emplacements emerged from the station's hull, their designs a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and Shellyak technology. The expedition team watched in awe as Donald and Uma coordinated the station's responses. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, their glowing bodies reflecting the intricate dance of energy coursing through the station systems. The Vorax fleet, caught off guard by the unexpected display of force, began evasive maneuvers. Their sleek biomechanical ships darted and weaved, attempting to penetrate the energy shields with advanced weaponry. Each attack was met with an adaptive response from the hybrid defenses, the ancient technology proving remarkably resilient. Suddenly, Uma stiffened, her silver eyes widening. "I can sense them," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "The Vorax commanders. I can feel their thoughts, their intentions." This newfound telepathic ability allowed her to anticipate the Vorax tactics with uncanny accuracy. She relayed the information to Donald, who adjusted the station's defenses accordingly, always staying one step ahead of their attackers. As the battle raged, the cryogenic chamber housing the ancient hybrids began to stir. The energy emissions from the conflict had triggered a revival sequence, forcing Captain Holt to make a split-second decision. "Dr. Voss," he called out, his voice taut with urgency, "begin a controlled awakening process for one of the hybrids. We need their insights, and we need them now." As Dr. Voss rushed to comply, Donald's electromagnetic abilities surged to new heights. He discovered he could project powerful electromagnetic pulses, disrupting the Vorax ship's systems. The alien vessels shuddered and faltered under his assault, providing the expedition team with a much-needed advantage. The awakened ancient hybrid, a female named Lyra, regained consciousness with remarkable speed. Her eyes, a swirling mix of human and Shellyak features, quickly assessed the situation. Without hesitation, she joined Donald and Uma at the control interface, her movements fluid and purposeful. "The Vorax have a weakness," Lyra announced, her voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. "Their ships rely on a specific frequency of bioelectric energy. If we can disrupt it, we can cripple their fleet." With Lyra's guidance, the trio of hybrids formed a formidable defense. Their combined abilities created a synergy that pushed the Vorax fleet to its limits. Donald's electromagnetic pulses, Uma's tactical insights, and Lyra's ancient knowledge merged into a force that the alien attackers struggled to counter. As the battle intensified, Uma's body began to secrete a new type of bioluminescent fluid. When applied to the station's weapon systems, it enhanced their power and accuracy to unprecedented levels. Donald, connected to Uma through their telepathic bond, channeled this energy to create an even more effective defense grid. The Vorax, realizing they were outmatched, launched a desperate final assault. A barrage of bioorganic torpedoes streaked towards the station's power core, their trajectory a tangled web of destruction. Donald, Uma, and Lyra reacted as one. Their abilities merged, creating a complex energy field that caught the torpedoes mid-flight. With a surge of power, they redirected the deadly projectiles back towards the Vorax fleet. The resulting explosions lit up space, crippling several of the alien ships. Faced with the failure of their attack and mounting losses, the Vorax fleet began to retreat. Captain Holt, seizing the opportunity, ordered the capture of one of the damaged Vorax vessels. "We need to understand their technology," he explained. "It could be the key to preventing future attacks." As the immediate threat subsided, new challenges arose. The awakening of Lyra had triggered a cascading revival process in the other ancient hybrids. Dr. Alara Voss worked frantically to stabilize their condition, her hands moving with practiced precision over unfamiliar controls. Donald and Uma, their bodies pushed to the limit by the intense battle, began to experience unexpected changes. Their hybrid traits became more pronounced, new abilities manifesting with startling rapidity. Dr. Voss, observing their transformation with a mix of scientific curiosity and concern, theorized that the high-stress situation had accelerated their evolutionary process. Captain Holt, recognizing the monumental importance of their discoveries, initiated a secure transmission to Nexus 7. "We need immediate reinforcements," he stated, his voice firm, "and every available scientific mind. What we've uncovered here could reshape our understanding of the galaxy." As the expedition team began to assess the aftermath of the battle, they made another startling discovery. The station's systems had mapped out the location of several other hybrid outposts scattered throughout the galaxy. Each blinking light on the holographic display represented a new frontier of exploration and potential. Donald and Uma, exhausted but exhilarated, stood hand in hand before the galactic map. The hybrid station, with its wealth of knowledge and advanced technology, represented more than just a turning point in their relationship. It was a gateway to a future neither of them could have imagined. As they prepared for the arrival of reinforcements from Nexus 7, the couple exchanged a look of drive. Their journey, they realized, had only just begun. The challenges ahead would test the limits of their evolving abilities and the strength of their bond. But together they were ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them. The future held untold challenges, but together they were prepared to face whatever lay ahead. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Donald and Uma felt a strange tingling sensation coursing through their bodies. They exchanged glances, noticing subtle changes in each other's appearance. Donald's skin began to shimmer with an intricate, ever-shifting pattern of bioluminescence, while Uma's hair took on a silvery sheen and seemed to move with a life of its own. Dr. Alara Voss approached them, her eyes wide with fascination. "Incredible," she breathed, scanning them with a handheld device. "Your hybrid physiology is evolving at an accelerated rate. We need to study this immediately." Captain Holt nodded his agreement. "Set up a temporary research station, Doctor. We need to understand these changes." As Dr. Voss bustled away to prepare her equipment, Donald experimentally flexed his arm. To his amazement, the bioluminescent patterns on his skin shifted, blending seamlessly with the metallic wall behind him. "Uma, look at this," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Uma reached out, her newly prehensile hair gently grasping a nearby datapad. "It seems we're both full of surprises," she replied, manipulating the device with her silver locks. Their attention was drawn to Lyra, the awakened ancient hybrid, who approached them with graceful steps. "Your transformations are remarkable," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Come, there is much to show you." Lyra led the expedition team through previously inaccessible areas of the station, her knowledge unlocking doors that had remained sealed for millennia. As they walked, Donald and Uma felt an inexplicable pull towards her, a sense of kinship that transcended their different origins. Their exploration led them to a vast chamber filled with lush vegetation. Plants of every imaginable hue and shape filled the space, their leaves shimmering with an otherworldly light. "A hydroponics bay," Lyra explained. "These hybrid plants were cultivated to sustain our kind." Uma felt a sudden urge to approach one of the plants. As she neared it, a new type of fluid began to seep from her palms. Instinctively, she touched the plant, and before their eyes it began to grow and produce fruit at an astonishing rate. Donald, watching in awe, felt a surge of energy within him. He raised his hands and the electromagnetic fields around the plants became visible to him. With a thought, he manipulated these fields, further enhancing the plant's growth. Dr. Voss, who had been observing closely, quickly collected samples of the rapidly growing fruit. After a brief analysis, she turned to the group, her eyes shining with excitement. "These fruits contain a complex array of nutrients specifically tailored for hybrid biology. Regular consumption could potentially stabilize and enhance your hybridization process." As the team continued to explore the station's archives, they uncovered information about a network of similar outposts spread across the galaxy. Captain Holt immediately recognized the significance of this discovery. "This changes everything," he announced. "We need to prepare for a long-term mission. This station will be our base of operations as we explore these outposts." Meanwhile, in another section of the station, a team of engineers led by Marcus Howard began the delicate process of studying the captured Vorax vessel. As they delved into its bioorganic systems, Uma suddenly stiffened, her silver eyes going wide. "I can sense something," she said, her voice distant. "Thoughts? Images? From the Vorax ship." Donald placed a steadying hand on her shoulder as Uma described flashes of a world unlike any they had seen before, the Vorax homeworld. She spoke of a society driven by an overwhelming desire for biological perfection, providing crucial context for their aggressive actions. As the day progressed, Donald found himself working closely with Lyra to understand the station's defensive systems. Together, they discovered a dormant network of satellites orbiting nearby planets. "This is incredible," Donald said as he activated the system. A holographic display sprang to life, showing a vast array of sensors covering an enormous swath of space. "With this, we can track ship movements across the entire sector." Captain Holt nodded approvingly. "Excellent work. This will give us a significant tactical advantage." As the expedition team continued their work, tensions began to rise. News of their discoveries had reached Nexus 7, and conflicting orders were starting to arrive. Captain Holt found himself torn between his belief in cooperation and the directives to restrict access to certain areas of the station. Donald and Uma, acutely aware of the growing political complications, redoubled their efforts to understand their evolving abilities. They spent hours in Dr. Voss's makeshift lab, undergoing tests and pushing the limits of their new powers. As the day drew to a close, the couple found themselves in the station's observatory, gazing out at the star-filled expanse before them. Uma's silver hair gently intertwined with Donald's fingers as they stood in comfortable silence. "Whatever happens," Donald said softly, "whatever we become, we face it together." Uma nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Together," she agreed. In the distance, a star pulsed, marking the location of the nearest hybrid outpost. As they watched, Captain Holt's voice came over the station's communication system. "All personnel, prepare for departure. Our journey to the first outpost begins at OSIN 600 hours." Donald and Uma exchanged a look of anticipation. Their next great adventure was about to begin, and with it, the promise of unraveling more secrets of their hybrid nature. As the first rays of artificial dawn illuminated the station, Donald and Uma found themselves in the midst of a flurry of activity. The expedition team bustled around them, preparing for their imminent departure to the nearby hybrid outpost. The couple stood before a large viewport, watching as the stars seemed to pulse with newfound energy. Donald's skin rippled with intricate patterns of bioluminescence, casting a soft glow around them. Uma's silvery hair moved gently, as if stirred by an unseen breeze. They exchanged a glance, both acutely aware of the accelerating changes in their bodies. "I feel different," Donald said, flexing his fingers as tiny arcs of electricity danced between them. "Like I'm becoming more attuned to the energy around us." Uma nodded, her silver eyes gleaming. "I understand. Watch this." She concentrated, and her hair extended, wrapping around a nearby console. To Donald's amazement, the screens lit up, responding to the electrical impulses conducted through Uma's silvery locks. "Fascinating," Dr. Alara Voss's voice came from behind them. She approached, her eyes wide with scientific curiosity. "Your hybrid traits are evolving at an unprecedented rate. Uma, your hair seems to have developed conductive properties, while Donald, your bioluminescent patterns are becoming more complex and responsive to your surroundings." Captain Holt joined them, his expression a mix of awe and concern. "These changes could be invaluable for our mission," he said, "but we need to ensure they're stable and controllable." Dr. Voss nodded eagerly. "I've been working with Lyra in the hydroponics bay. We've made a breakthrough with the hybrid plants there. If you'll follow me, I think we found something that could help." The group made their way to the lush chamber they had discovered earlier. The plants seemed even more vibrant now, their leaves shimmering with an otherworldly light. Lyra stood among them, her hands gently caressing a large bulbous flower. "We've discovered that these plants produce a nutrient-rich sap," Lyra explained, her voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. "It bears a striking resemblance to the fluid Uma secreted during the Vorax attack." Dr. Voss carefully extracted a small vial of iridescent liquid from the flower. "We believe this sap could help stabilize your rapidly changing physiology and potentially enhance your hybrid abilities." Donald and Uma exchanged a look, then nodded in agreement. They each took a vial and drank the contents. The effect was immediate and intense. Donald felt a surge of energy coursing through his body, his bioluminescent patterns flaring brightly before settling into a more stable, controlled state. Uma gasped as her hair seemed to come alive. weaving intricate patterns in the air around her before relaxing into gentle waves. Incredible, Captain Holt breathed. But we don't have time to fully explore these changes now. We need to prepare for our departure to the outpost. As they made their way to the shuttle bay, Donald and Uma found themselves working in perfect synchronization, their enhanced abilities proving invaluable in upgrading the ancient station systems. Donald's electromagnetic manipulation allowed him to fine-tune delicate circuitry, while Uma's conductive hair created temporary bridges between malfunctioning components. The shuttle, newly modified with technology from the ancient station, stood ready for departure. As the team boarded, Captain Holt pulled Donald and Uma aside. "I need to brief you on a new protocol," he said, his voice low. "Given the sensitive nature of our discoveries, I've implemented a tiered clearance system for information sharing. We'll be controlling what we disseminate to both human and Sheliak authorities on Nexus 7. Donald frowned. "Won't that create tension within the team? Some might feel it hinders our progress." Holt nodded grimly. "It's a risk we have to take. The potential consequences of this knowledge falling into the wrong hands are too great." As the shuttle launched, Donald and Uma took their positions at the navigation console. Their enhanced senses and reflexes proved crucial as they approached a dense asteroid field blocking their path to the outpost. "I can feel the electromagnetic fields of the asteroids," Donald said, his fingers dancing across the controls. "If we modulate our shields to match their frequency, we can slip through unharmed." Uma's hair extended, interfacing directly with the ship's systems. "Adjusting course now," she announced, her eyes closed in concentration. "I can sense a clear path." The shuttle weaved through the asteroid field with impossible grace, emerging on the other side unscathed. The team let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. As they approached the outpost, its ancient structure came into view. Despite centuries of neglect, it maintained a certain ethereal beauty. The shuttle docked smoothly, and the team prepared to disembark. "Remember," Captain Holt warned, "we don't know what we'll find in there. Stay alert and report anything unusual immediately." As they stepped into the outpost, dormant systems suddenly sprang to life. Lights flickered on, and a soft hum filled the air. Donald and Uma felt a strange resonance within their bodies, as if the outpost itself recognized their hybrid nature. "Look," Uma pointed to a nearby console that had activated. "It seems to be responding to our presence." Dr. Voss approached the console, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's powering up more systems. I think we've triggered some kind of activation sequence." Suddenly, a holographic figure materialized before them. It was a tall, androgynous being with features that blended human and Sheliak characteristics. "Greetings," the hologram spoke, its voice echoing through the chamber. "I am Arxis, the AI construct left to safeguard this outpost. You are the first to activate this facility in centuries. Welcome, hybrid descendants. There is much to show you." As Arxis began to reveal the secrets of the outpost, Donald and Uma felt a surge of anticipation. They stood on the threshold of a new chapter in their journey, one that promised to unravel the mysteries of their hybrid heritage and perhaps reshape the future of human-Sheliak relations. The challenges ahead were unknown, but together they were ready to face whatever the outpost had in store for them. As Arxis began to reveal the secrets of the outpost, a piercing alarm suddenly echoed through the chamber, startling the expedition team. Captain Holt's communicator crackled to life. "Sir, we've detected multiple ships approaching our position," reported the shuttle pilot, his voice tense. Holt's expression hardened. "Understood. Maintain radio silence and stand by." He turned to the team, his voice low and urgent. "We need to secure our position. Donald, Uma, see if you can access the outpost's defensive systems." The couple nodded in unison, their bodies glowing faintly as they interfaced with the ancient technology. Donald's fingers danced across a nearby console, electricity arcing between his hands and the control panel. Uma's silvery hair extended, weaving through the air and connecting with multiple access points simultaneously. "Captain," Donald called out, his eyes fixed on a holographic display. "I found something. This outpost has advanced cloaking technology." Without hesitation, Captain Holt ordered, "Activated. We need to buy ourselves some time. As Donald and Uma worked in tandem to engage the cloaking system, the rest of the team hurried to secure their discoveries and prepare for potential confrontation. Dr. Voss carefully packed her research samples, while Lyra conferred with Arxis, rapidly exchanging information about the outpost's capabilities. The air shimmered around them as the cloaking field engaged, enveloping the outpost in a protective shroud of invisibility. The team collectively held their breath, watching the sensor readings as the approaching ships drew nearer. "They've slowed their approach," Uma reported, her silver eyes reflecting the data streaming across the screens. "It seems they've lost our exact position." Captain Holt nodded grimly. "Good work, but we're not out of danger yet. We need a way to communicate with Nexus 7 without compromising our location." Donald's bioluminescent patterns pulsed as an idea struck him. "Captain, I think I found something. There's a dormant communication array capable of long-range transmission. Uma and I might be able to activate it and send a coded message." "Do it," Holt ordered, "but be careful. We can't risk giving away our position." Working in perfect synchronization, Donald and Uma channeled their hybrid abilities into the ancient systems. Their bodies glowed with increasing intensity as they interfaced with the complex technology, pushing their newfound powers to the limit. With a sudden surge of energy, the communication array hummed to life. Donald's fingers flew across the controls, composing a coded message while Uma focused on maintaining the signal's integrity. Within moments, their distress call was streaking across space towards Nexus 7, carrying with it an urgent plea for diplomatic intervention. As the team awaited a response, Dr. Voss approached Captain Holt, her face flushed with excitement. "Captain, I've made a breakthrough in my analysis of the genetic manipulation technology we found. There's a sequence in the hybrid DNA that could potentially stabilize Donald and Uma's rapid changes." Holt's brow furrowed. "What are the risks?" "Unknown," Dr. Voss admitted. "We need to use the ancient equipment, and we can't be certain of the long-term effects." The captain's gaze shifted to Donald and Uma, who had been listening intently. "It's your decision," he told them, "but we could use every advantage right now." The couple exchanged a look, an entire conversation passing between them in an instant. "We'll do it," Donald said firmly, Uma nodding in agreement. As Dr. Voss prepared the genetic manipulation devices, tension filled the air. Donald and Uma lay side by side on two gleaming platforms, their hands clasped tightly together. The machines hummed to life, bathing them in a soft, pulsating light. Dr. Voss worked with intense concentration, her fingers flying over the controls as she carefully administered the treatment. Donald and Uma's bodies began to glow, their bioluminescent patterns swirling and shifting in mesmerizing patterns. Suddenly, a deafening alarm blared through the outpost. Captain Holt's communicator crackled urgently. "Sir, the approaching ships have detected an energy spike. They're homing in on our location." Holt's voice rang out over the chaos. "Maintain the cloaking field. Dr. Voss, how much longer?" "Almost there," she called back, her eyes never leaving the readouts. "Just a few more moments." The outpost trembled as the first of the approaching ships attempted to breach the cloaking field. On the sensor displays, a Vorax vessel loomed ominously, its bioorganic hull pulsing with aggressive energy. "Defensive systems online," Lyra reported, her hands dancing across the ancient controls. "But we're outgunned and outnumbered." As the situation reached its crescendo, Donald and Uma's bodies arched in unison, their forms briefly obscured by a blinding flash of light. When it faded, they sat up slowly, their appearances subtly altered. Donald's electromagnetic aura now shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, while Uma's glowing hair crackled with electrical energy. "How do you feel?" Dr. Voss asked anxiously. Uma flexed her fingers, watching as arcs of electricity danced between them. "Balanced," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Powerful." Donald nodded, his eyes gleaming with newfound clarity. "We can help," he said, turning to Captain Holt. "We can defend the outpost." Without waiting for a response, the couple moved to the main control center. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, their newly stabilized hybrid abilities working in harmony. As they interfaced with the outpost systems, a shimmering energy field sprang to life around the structure, reinforcing its defenses. The Vorax ship launched its first assault, a barrage of bioorganic projectiles that splashed harmlessly against the enhanced shields. Donald and Uma worked in concert, their combined powers allowing for unprecedented control over the outpost weapon systems. As the battle raged, more ships arrived, a mix of human and Shellyak vessels joining the fray. The situation quickly escalated into a tense standoff, with each faction demanding access to the outpost and its secrets. Captain Holt, his face grim but determined, opened communication channels to all parties. "This is Captain Alexander Holt of the Joint Human-Shellyak Expedition. I urge all vessels to stand down. We have made discoveries here that affect all of our peoples, and we must approach this situation with diplomacy, not violence." As Holt worked to defuse the volatile situation, Donald and Uma made a startling discovery. Their enhanced abilities allowed them to access and interpret the vast amounts of data stored in the crystal devices they had found earlier. As they delved deeper into the ancient knowledge, their eyes widened in shock. "Captain," Donald called out, his voice urgent, "you need to see this. We found something that changes everything." The information they uncovered would reshape their understanding of the galaxy and the true purpose of the outpost network. As they prepared to share their findings, Donald and Uma knew that the revelation would either unite the assembled factions or plunge them into an even greater conflict. The fate of not just their expedition, but possibly the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Balance. The fate of not just their expedition, but possibly the entire galaxy, hung in the air as Donald and Uma prepared to share their findings. Before they could speak, however, Uma's body began to glow with an intense, silvery light. She gasped, her hands flying to her chest as she felt a strange sensation coursing through her. "Uma!" Donald exclaimed, rushing to her side. "What's happening?" Dr. Voss quickly approached, her scanner whirring as she passed it over Uma's body. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Fascinating! Her hybrid physiology is undergoing another rapid change." As the light faded, Uma looked down at herself in wonder. Her upper torso had subtly reshaped, with new glands visible beneath her skin. A thin trickle of pearlescent fluid seeped from small openings that had formed. I'm producing some kind of liquid," Uma said, her voice a mix of awe and confusion. Dr. Voss collected a sample, her face alight with scientific curiosity. "It appears to be a nutrient-rich, milk-like substance. This is remarkable." Captain Holt frowned, concern etched on his face. "Is she all right, Doctor?" "More than all right, I'd say," Dr. Voss replied, studying her scanner. "This seems to be an adaptation to support potential hybrid offspring. It's as if her body is preparing for the next stage of evolution." Donald placed a comforting hand on Uma's shoulder, his own body pulsing with a soft blue light in response to her change. "How do you feel?" Uma took a deep breath, centering herself. "Strange, but not unpleasant. I feel complete, somehow." As the team processed this new development, Dr. Voss set to work analyzing the milk-like substance. Her tests revealed a complex blend of human and Shellyak nutrients, along with trace elements from the hybrid plants in the station's hydroponics bay. "The regenerative properties of this fluid are off the charts," Dr. Voss announced, her voice filled with excitement. "It could potentially accelerate healing and enhance physical performance." Donald, driven by a mixture of curiosity and deep affection for Uma, stepped forward. "I'd like to try it if that's all right." After a moment's hesitation, Uma nodded. Donald carefully collected a small amount of the fluid and brought it to his lips. As he swallowed, his eyes widened in surprise. "It's incredible," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "I can feel it enhancing my abilities." To demonstrate, Donald raised his hand, effortlessly manipulating the electromagnetic fields around him with unprecedented precision. The air crackled with energy as he formed complex patterns of light and electricity. Captain Holt watched the display with a mix of awe and concern. "This changes everything. We need to inform the Joint Task Force immediately." As news of Uma's unique ability spread, it created a stir among the assembled factions. Human and Shellyak scientists alike clamored for the opportunity to study the milk-like substance. recognizing its potential applications in medicine and biotechnology. Even the Vorax, still maintaining a cautious distance, showed particular interest in the fluid's regenerative properties. Their bioorganic ships pulsed with an almost eager energy as they moved closer to the outpost. Recognizing the sensitive nature of this development, Captain Holt implemented strict protocols regarding access to Uma and her milk-like substance. He assigned a security detail to protect the hybrid couple, mindful of potential attempts to exploit their unique biology. "We need to focus on the bigger picture," Holt reminded the team. "What did you discover about the outpost network?" Donald and Uma exchanged a glance before interfacing with the ancient systems once more. Their bodies glowed in unison as they accessed the data crystals, translating the information for the rest of the team. "There's a network of relay stations scattered throughout the galaxy," Donald explained, his voice resonating with the power of the ancient technology. "They're designed to monitor and potentially counteract the cosmic energy anomaly that threatens all civilizations." Uma's silver hair whipped around her as she manipulated holographic displays. "We found coordinates for several dormant relay stations. If we can activate them, we might be able to prepare for the impending threat." Dr. Voss, analyzing the incoming data, paled visibly. "According to these calculations, we may have less than a decade before the next cosmic energy wave hits. We need to act fast." Captain Holt's teeth clenched in persistence. "Then we have no time to waste. Donald, Uma, can you establish contact with one of these relay stations?" The hybrid couple nodded in unison, their bodies pulsing with energy as they interfaced with the outpost's long-range communication array. The air hummed with power as they reached out across vast distances of space. Suddenly, a new holographic display sprang to life, showing a massive structure floating in the void of space. As they watched, lights began to flicker on across its surface. "We've done it," Uma breathed. "We've activated the first relay station." As the station came online, it began transmitting vast amounts of data about cosmic energy patterns and gravitational anomalies. The information flooded the outpost systems, providing crucial insights into the nature of the impending threat. The revelation of this cosmic danger created a palpable shift in the political dynamics among the assembled factions. Representatives from Earth, the Sheliak homeworld, and even the Vorax began to discuss the formation of a unified defense initiative. As preparations for a larger expedition to activate more relay stations got underway, Uma's milk production increased. The scientific team discovered that exposure to the activated relay station's energy emissions seemed to have stimulated her hybrid biology. Donald and Uma's relationship deepened as they navigated these new changes. Their bond became a subject of fascination for both humans and Sheliaks, with many seeing it as a model for future interspecies relationships. As the joint task force began to coalesce around the ancient hybrid outpost, Donald and Uma found themselves at the center of a new chapter in galactic history. The milk-like substance produced by Uma became a symbol of hope and unity, its properties holding the potential to bridge biological gaps between species and possibly provide a key to surviving the approaching cosmic threat. With the weight of their discoveries pressing upon them, the expedition team prepared for their next major undertaking, a mission to activate a chain of relay stations spanning several star systems. As they readied themselves for the challenges ahead, Donald and Uma stood at the forefront, their unique abilities and deepening bond representing the potential for a new era of interstellar cooperation and evolutionary advancement. As the expedition team made final preparations for their galaxy-spanning mission, Uma's body continued to adapt and change. Her milk production increased dramatically, drawing the attention of Dr. Ilera Voss. The scientist's eyes gleamed with excitement as she conducted more comprehensive tests on the pearlescent fluid. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Voss announced, studying the results on her holographic display. "Uma's milk contains trace amounts of an unknown element. I'm calling it hybridium for now." Captain Holt leaned in, his brow furrowed. "What are its properties, Doctor?" "It appears to enhance the regenerative and adaptive capabilities of hybrid biology," Dr. Voss explained. "The implications are staggering." Donald, who had been regularly consuming Uma's milk, felt a tingling sensation course through his body. He raised his hand, watching in awe as his electromagnetic field expanded and pulsed with newfound intensity. I think I'm experiencing those enhanced capabilities firsthand, he said, manipulating a wider range of frequencies than ever before. As the fleet departed from the hybrid outpost, Donald and Uma found themselves at the forefront of the mission. Their unique abilities would soon prove invaluable as they approached the first dormant relay station in the chain. The vastness of space gave way to an unexpected obstacle, a massive debris field composed of ancient spacecraft and technological remnants. The ship's navigation systems crackled with interference, struggling to plot a safe course. Captain Holt's voice came over the comm system, tense but controlled. All ships, hold position. We need to find a way through this mess. Donald and Uma exchanged a determined look. Without a word, they moved to the lead ship's observation deck. Uma's body began to glow, her bioluminescence intensifying to illuminate the safest path through the debris. I can see the currents of energy flowing through the field, Donald said, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. I think I can deflect the dangerous objects. Working in perfect synchronization, the hybrid couple guided the fleet through the treacherous expanse. Donald's enhanced electromagnetic abilities pushed aside potentially lethal fragments, while Uma's radiant glow served as a beacon for the following ships. As they finally reached the dormant relay station, a new challenge presented itself. The station's activation sequence required a specific genetic key. Dr. Voss's voice crackled over the comm. It's likely tied to the ancient hybrid civilization's DNA. Donald, Uma, you're our best chance at activation. The couple stepped into the airlock, their specialized suits adapting to their unique physiologies. As they crossed the void to the station's entry point, Uma felt a surge in her milk production, her body responding to the station's latent energy. Inside the control room, Donald and Uma placed their hands on the ancient interface panels. The station hummed to life, recognizing their hybrid DNA. Energy coursed through their bodies, causing Uma's bioluminescence to flare brilliantly and Donald's electromagnetic field to expand visibly. Suddenly, a powerful energy pulse erupted from the station, temporarily disabling all electronic systems in the vicinity. The pulse reverberated through the debris field, awakening long-dormant defense drones. Incoming hostiles, Captain Holt's voice cut through the chaos. All ships, assume defensive positions. As the fleet engaged the ancient drones, Donald and Uma fought to maintain their connection to the station systems. The influx of data was overwhelming, flooding their minds with information about the cosmic energy anomaly. We're almost there, Uma gasped, her body glowing ever brighter. With a final surge of energy, the relay station activated fully. A concentrated beam shot out, neutralizing the hostile drones and ending the immediate threat to the fleet. But the energy beam's effect on the debris field was unexpected and awe-inspiring. The scattered remnants began to move, coalescing into a swirling vortex of metallic fragments and pulsing energy. Dr. Voss's excited voice filled the comm channel. Incredible! The debris field, it's not just random space junk, it's a deconstructed megastructure. As the team watched in amazement, the debris continued to reform, shaping itself into a massive ring-like structure encircling the relay station. The newly formed megastructure emitted energy patterns strikingly similar to those produced by Uma's hybridium-infused milk. Donald and Uma, still connected to the station systems, felt another wave of information flood their minds. Visions of the ancient hybrid civilization flashed before their eyes, revealing the true purpose of the megastructure. It's a defense system, Donald said, his voice filled with awe, designed to protect against the cosmic energy anomaly. Uma nodded, her silver hair crackling with electrical energy, and we've just initiated its reconstruction process. As the couple disengaged from the station's interface, they noticed further changes in their own bodies. Donald's skin now shimmered with bioluminescent patterns mirroring Uma's, while Uma found she could manipulate electromagnetic fields on a limited scale. Captain Holt's voice cut through their wonder. Donald, Uma, report back to the ship immediately. We need to assess the situation and plan our next move. As they made their way back to the lead vessel, Donald and Uma knew that their journey was nowhere near the end. The activation of the first relay station and the reconstruction of the ancient megastructure were just the beginning. With their evolving abilities and the secrets of the hybrid civilization gradually unfolding before them, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their mission to protect the universe from the impending cosmic threat. As the newly formed megastructure continued to take shape, the expedition fleet watched in awe. However, their wonder quickly turned to concern as the energy emissions from the structure began to interfere with their ship's systems. Consoles flickered, and navigation instruments gave erratic readings. Captain Holt's voice crackled over the comm system, distorted by the interference. "All ships, maintain a safe distance. We need to assess this situation before proceeding." Dr. Alara Voss, her face illuminated by the pulsing light of her holographic displays, turned to the captain. "Sir, I believe I have a solution. We can create a specialized containment field using Uma's hybridium-infused milk and Donald's electromagnetic abilities. It should stabilize the energy emissions and allow us to approach safely." Holt nodded, his expression grave. "Make it happen, Doctor." The medical bay of the lead ship transformed into a hive of activity as it was converted into a temporary milk collection and processing facility. Uma lay on a biobed, her silver hair splayed out around her head like a metallic halo. Energy pulses from the relay station, carefully calibrated by Dr. Voss, stimulated her milk production. Uma gasped as another wave of energy coursed through her body. "It's intense," she said, her skin glowing brightly. Donald stood nearby, his hand intertwined with Uma's. "You're doing great," he assured her, his own body shimmering with a subtle, pearlescent sheen. In the adjacent lab, Donald worked alongside the engineering team, infusing the collected milk with his electromagnetic energy. The air crackled with power as he channeled his abilities into the pearlescent fluid. Dr. Voss oversaw the construction of a prototype containment field generator. The spherical chamber, filled with the hybridium-infused milk and surrounded by electromagnetic coils, hummed with potential energy. Probe launch in 3, 2, 1. The countdown echoed through the ship as the small, unmanned vessel carrying the prototype was released. It streaked towards the megastructure, its protective field glowing softly. Every eye on the bridge was fixed on the main view screen as the probe approached the turbulent energy field surrounding the ancient construct. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed to stall at the boundary. Then it slipped through, unharmed. A cheer erupted from the crew. Captain Holt allowed himself a small smile before issuing his next order. "Begin production of larger containment field generators for our ships. Uma's milk is now our most critical resource." As the fleet bustled with round-the-clock collection and processing operations, Donald continued to consume Uma's milk regularly. He flexed his arm, watching as his skin deflected a beam of light. "Dr. Voss, my body, it's changing again." The scientist scanned him, her eyes widening at the results. "Fascinating. Your cellular structure is becoming more dense, more resilient. You might be able to withstand direct exposure to the megastructure's energy emissions now." Their excitement was short-lived. The ship's long-range sensors blared an alarm, and Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the air. "Captain, we've detected a large Vorax fleet entering the system. They're taking up aggressive positions around the debris field." Holt's eyes sharp. "They're after the megastructure. We need to move fast. Accelerate the outfitting of our ships with the containment field generators." The fleet sprang into action, crews working at breakneck speed to install the hybridium milk generators. As the last ship was equipped, the Vorax fleet loomed ever closer on the sensors. Captain Holt addressed the assembled team. "Donald, Uma, you'll lead a small team to board the structure and access its central control systems. Your hybrid biology makes you our best chance at interfacing with this technology." The boarding team, Donald, Uma, Dr. Voss, and a select group of human and celiac specialists, boarded a modified shuttle. Its hull gleamed with the soft glow of the hybridium milk containment field. As they launched from the hangar, Uma gazed out at the swirling debris and crackling energy discharges surrounding the megastructure. It's beautiful, she whispered, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen, where her milk production had reached unprecedented levels. The shuttle weaved through the dangerous field, guided by Donald's enhanced senses and Uma's intuitive understanding of the energy flows. They approached the megastructure's outer shell, marveling at its intricate, ever-shifting surface. There, Donald pointed. Those look like airlocks. As they neared, the airlocks pulsed with light, responding to the hybrid couple's unique biology. The team prepared to dock, their excitement palpable. Suddenly, the shuttle rocked violently. Alarms blared as Captain Holt's voice came through, tight with tension. The Vorax fleet has launched an attack. We're engaging in defensive maneuvers. Get inside that structure now. The boarding team scrambled to complete the docking procedure as energy weapons fire lit up the space around them. With a final, resounding clank, they were in. Donald and Uma led the way into the megastructure, their bodies glowing softly in the dim interior. The vast, labyrinthine corridors stretched out before them, filled with technology beyond their comprehension. As they delved deeper, Donald and Uma found they could interact with the structure's systems, their hybrid abilities allowing them to gradually gain control over basic functions. This way, Uma said, drawn by an inexplicable pull. The team followed her to a massive central chamber dominated by what appeared to be a quantum computer of staggering complexity. Dr. Voss's eyes widened as she scanned the device. This must be the key to fully activating the structure. If we can interface with it, we might be able to harness its power against the cosmic energy anomaly. Outside, the battle between the task force and the Vorax fleet raged. The fate of the ancient hybrid technology hung in the balance as Donald and Uma approached the quantum computer, their bodies crackling with energy. "Are you ready?" Donald asked, his hand hovering over the interface. Uma nodded, her silver hair floating around her in the energy-charged air. "Together," she said. As they placed their hands on the ancient controls, a surge of power coursed through them. The quantum computer hummed to life, its displays flickering with information beyond human understanding. The megastructure trembled around them as systems began to activate. Donald and Uma stood at the center of it all, their bodies evolving further as they merged with the ancient hybrid technology. The greatest challenge of their lives lay before them, unlocking the secrets of a long-lost civilization while a battle raged outside, with the fate of the galactic realm hanging in the balance. Balance. The quantum computer pulsed with energy, its displays flickering with incomprehensible data as Donald and Uma's hands remained firmly planted on its surface. Suddenly, the megastructure shuddered violently. Captain Holt's voice crackled through their comms, strained and urgent. "The Vorax fleet has launched an attack. We're engaging in defensive maneuvers, but we need that structure operational now." Donald and Uma exchanged a determined glance, their bodies glowing with increasing intensity as they pushed deeper into the ancient system. Dr. Voss monitored their vital signs, her eyes widening at the readings on her handheld scanner. "Their hybrid physiology is evolving at an exponential rate," she reported, her voice a mix of awe and concern. The prolonged exposure to the megastructure's energy field, combined with the continued consumption of Uma's milk, is accelerating their transformation. As if to confirm her words, Donald's skin took on a metallic sheen, reflecting the pulsing lights of the chamber. Uma's bioluminescent patterns grew more intricate, swirling across her skin in complex, mesmerizing designs. Outside, the battle raged. Captain Holt's voice came through again. "Deploying hybridium-based weapons. Let's hope they're as effective as our tests suggested." The task force ships unleashed streams of pearlescent energy, their weapons charged with Uma's processed milk. The effect on the Vorax bioorganic vessels was immediate and dramatic. Where the energy fields made contact, the alien ships' hulls began to destabilize, their biomechanical systems thrown into chaos. Inside the megastructure, Donald and Uma worked feverishly, their minds now able to interpret the complex data streams flowing through the quantum computer. Holographic displays sprang to life around them, filling the vast chamber with ghostly images of star systems and energy grids. "We're close," Uma gasped, her voice strained. "Just a little more." Her words were cut short as the quantum computer initiated a DNA scan. A beam of light swept over the boarding team, lingering on Donald and Uma. The couple stiffened, their eyes going wide as an immense flood of data poured directly into their neural networks. "Donald! Uma!" Dr. Voss cried out as they collapsed to the floor, their bodies convulsing. She rushed to their side, but a shimmering energy barrier sprang up, keeping her at bay. Suddenly, the megastructure's automated defense systems activated. Panels slid open in the walls, revealing rows of ominous-looking energy weapons. They swiveled towards the boarding team, powering up with an ominous hum. "Defensive positions," shouted Lieutenant Chen, raising his weapon. The team scrambled for cover as energy bolts began to rain down on them. Dr. Voss ducked behind a console, her mind racing. The structure must perceive us as a threat due to the Vorax attack. We need to protect Donald and Uma until they regain consciousness. As the team fought off wave after wave of security drones, Donald and Uma lay motionless on the floor, their minds overwhelmed by the influx of ancient knowledge. Images of long-lost civilizations, advanced technologies, and cosmic events flashed through their consciousness. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the battle raged both inside and outside the megastructure. Then, with a gasp, Donald and Uma's eyes snapped open simultaneously. They rose to their feet with fluid grace, their movements perfectly synchronized. "We understand now," they spoke in unison, their voices resonating with newfound power. "This is not just a weapon. It's a cosmic energy converter." Their hands moved over the quantum computer's controls with practiced ease. The megastructure hummed to life, energy coursing through long, dormant conduits. Massive collectors extended from the structure's exterior, reaching out into space like the petals of an enormous flower. "Captain," Donald's voice came through the comms, "we're initiating the final activation sequence. Brace for impact." A pulse of energy erupted from the megastructure, washing over both the task force and the Vorax fleet. Ships on both sides went dark, their systems temporarily overloaded. In the central chamber, something extraordinary was happening to Donald and Uma. Their bodies began to shimmer and blur, drawn inexorably towards each other. The boarding team watched in astonishment as the two merged into a single radiant being. The new entity, neither fully Donald nor Uma, but something more, turned to face the awestruck team. Its voice echoed with the harmonic resonance of two beings speaking as one. "The cosmic anomaly has arrived ahead of schedule. We must act now to defend the cosmos." Outside, a wave of unimaginable energy approached the solar system, dwarfing even the massive megastructure. The merged Donald-Uma entity raised its arms, and the structure's collectors aligned perfectly with the oncoming force. As the cosmic anomaly made contact with the collectors, the megastructure lit up like a newborn star. Energy coursed through its systems, channeled and converted by technologies beyond human comprehension. A beam of pure, focused power shot out from the structure's core, striking a distant point in space. Across the galaxy, dormant relay stations awakened, creating a web of protective energy that began to stabilize the regions affected by the anomaly. The destructive force that had threatened to tear the galaxy apart was being harnessed, transformed into a shield for the very realms it had endangered. Captain Holt and his crew watched in awe as the cosmic light show unfolded before them. The Vorax fleet, their ships still disabled, floated helplessly in space, witness to a power they had sought to control but could scarcely comprehend. In the heart of the megastructure, the Donald-Uma entity stood at the center of a maelstrom of energy and information. Their consciousness expanded, encompassing not just the ancient machine, but the entire network of hybrid technology spread across the stars. As the immediate danger passed and the cosmic anomaly's energy was fully absorbed, Dr. Voss approached the glowing being that had once been her friends and colleagues. "Donald? Uma? Can you hear me?" The entity turned, its eyes filled with swirling galaxies. When it spoke, its voice resonated with the wisdom of ages. "We are here, Dr. Voss, but we are also so much more. The journey that lies ahead is beyond anything we could have imagined." Captain Holt's voice came through the comms, tinged with both relief and uncertainty. "The Vorax fleet is disabled, and the anomaly has been contained. But what happens now? What have Donald and Uma become? As the task force regrouped and the Vorax ships drifted powerless in space, the merged entity stood silently, its gaze fixed on the vast expanse of the cosmos. The future of human-Shellyak relations, the future of the stars, and the next phase of hybrid evolution hung in the balance, waiting to unfold. The merged Donald-Uma entity stood motionless, its gaze fixed on the cosmos, as the task force and disabled Vorax ships drifted in space. Suddenly, the being's form began to shimmer and expand, growing to an enormous size that dwarfed even the vast chamber around it. Captain Holt's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and authoritative. All ships maintain distance. The structure is changing. The megastructure trembled and groaned as the hybrid entity integrated with its core systems. Massive panels shifted and realigned, forming a protective shell around the evolving being. The task force watched in awe as the once angular structure transformed into a smooth, egg-like cocoon. Dr. Voss, still inside the structure, felt the floor beneath her feet quake. She stumbled, catching herself against a console. "We need to evacuate," she shouted to the boarding team. "The entire structure is reconfiguring." As they raced through the shifting corridors, narrowly avoiding being crushed by moving walls, Dr. Voss's mind raced with the implications of what she'd witnessed. The team barely made it to their shuttle, launching just as the airlock sealed behind them. Back on the lead ship, Captain Holt ordered a series of probes deployed to monitor the cocoon's transformation. "Dr. Voss, what's happening in there?" he asked as soon as the scientist was safely aboard. Voss, still catching her breath, moved to the sensor displays. "It's incredible," she said, her eyes wide as she analyzed the incoming data. The entity, Donald and Uma, they're undergoing a process I can only describe as hyper-evolution. The cosmic energy they absorbed is accelerating their transformation at an unprecedented rate. The ship's view screens showed the cocoon pulsating with energy, tendrils of light extending outward to connect with the activated relay stations. These connections formed a vast, intricate web that seemed to ripple and distort the very fabric of space around it. "Captain," a sensor operator called out, "we're detecting unusual activity in nearby star systems. Planets are changing." Holt leaned over the display, his brow furrowed. "Changing how?" "Atmospheres forming on barren worlds, sir. Complex ecosystems appearing out of nowhere. It's as if the relay network is terraforming entire planets instantaneously." Dr. Voss's fingers flew over her console as she correlated the data. "It's not just terraforming," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "This cosmic seeding is rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. The hybrid technology is reshaping reality itself." As the task force watched the cosmic spectacle unfold, alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the Vorax fleet is powering up. Their bioorganic hulls are regenerating." Holt's expression hardened. "Battle stations, form a defensive perimeter around the cocoon. We can't let them interfere with whatever's happening in there." As the task force ships maneuvered into position, Dr. Voss made another startling discovery. "Captain," she called out, her voice trembling slightly, "the hybridium milk samples we collected from Uma, they're alive." Holt turned, his eyebrows raised. "Alive? What do you mean?" Voss pulled up a microscopic view of the milk on the main screen. The pearlescent liquid swirled and formed complex fractal-like patterns, responding to stimuli in ways that defied explanation. "It's developed a form of primitive consciousness," Voss explained. "I believe it's linked to the evolution occurring within the cocoon. And that's not all. The energy web is emitting a new type of radiation. I'm calling it hybridium rays. Early data suggests it has mutagenic properties." As if to confirm her words, reports began flooding in from across the fleet. Crew members who had come into contact with Uma's milk were experiencing strange physiological changes, accelerated healing, heightened senses, even minor telekinetic abilities. Holt's comm unit chirped with an incoming transmission from Nexus 7. Admiral Thorne's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Captain, what the hell is going on out there? We're getting reports of planet-wide transformations across multiple sectors." Before Holt could respond, the cocoon surrounding the hybrid entity began to fracture. Brilliant light poured from the cracks, temporarily blinding sensors and sending waves of energy rippling through space. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted over the alarms, "the Vorax fleet is advancing. Our hybridium weapons aren't as effective anymore. Their ships are adapting." Captain Holt gripped the arms of his chair, his eyes fixed on the disintegrating cocoon. Whatever was about to emerge would likely determine the fate of not just this battle, but potentially the entire galaxy. "All ships, hold position," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Prepare for possible engagement, but do not fire unless fired upon. We need to see what comes out of that cocoon." As the task force braced for confrontation and the Vorax ships closed in, the cocoon's outer shell finally gave way. A blinding flash of light erupted from within, momentarily obscuring the new form of the Donald Uma entity. The task force and Vorax ships alike hung in breathless anticipation, waiting to see what new power had been born from the union of human, Shellyak, and ancient hybrid technology. As the light faded, the assembled fleets beheld a sight that defied comprehension. The cocoon had given way to a colossal being that dwarfed even the largest ships in the vicinity. Its form was a seamless blend of organic and technological elements, pulsating with hybridium energy. Tendrils of luminescent energy extended from the entity, reaching out toward the surrounding ships. Captain Holt gripped his chair as a surge of energy coursed through the lead ship. Alarms blared as systems overloaded, but instead of shutting down, they began to evolve. The ship's hull rippled and shifted, incorporating elements of the ancient hybrid technology. "Status report," Holt barked, watching in awe as his command console morphed before his eyes. "Sir, our systems are adapting," the tactical officer responded, his voice a mix of confusion and excitement. "Hull integrity is increasing exponentially. Weapon systems are reconfiguring themselves." Similar transformations swept across the task force fleet. Ships that were once purely mechanical now pulsed with organic life, their capabilities enhanced beyond their original design. The Vorax, sensing the potential threat, launched a coordinated attack on the hybrid entity. Energy weapons and bioorganic projectiles streaked across space, only to dissipate harmlessly against an invisible barrier surrounding the being. In response, the Donald Uma entity generated a massive energy field that engulfed the Vorax ships. The alien vessels froze in space, caught in a shimmering web of hybridium energy. Dr. Voss, her eyes glued to the sensor readings, called out, "Captain, the hybridium ray emissions from the entity have increased tenfold. And, sir, the crew members who were exposed to Uma's milk are showing signs of physiological changes." Holt turned to see several crew members on the bridge moving with newfound grace and agility. One ensign reached out towards a malfunctioning console, and to everyone's amazement, the circuitry repaired itself under his touch. "Dr. Voss, I want a full report on these changes," Holt ordered, "and set up a controlled environment for further exposure. We need to understand what's happening to our people." As the doctor hurried to comply, the view screens lit up with incoming data from across nearby star systems. Barren planets were transforming before their eyes, developing atmospheres and ecosystems in a matter of hours. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the entity." A holographic projection materialized on the bridge, a swirling vortex of light that coalesced into a form that was neither fully Donald nor Uma, but a perfect synthesis of both. "Captain Holt," the entity spoke, its voice resonating with power and knowledge, "we invite you to join us. Dock with the station we are creating. There is much to share." As the entity spoke, the enormous hybrid being began to reshape itself. The amorphous form condensed and solidified, transforming into a massive space station that pulsed with hybridium energy. Holt exchanged glances with his senior staff before making his decision. "Helm, take us in. Tactical, maintain defensive posture, but do not engage unless fired upon." The lead ship, along with a small contingent of the task force, maneuvered towards the hybrid station. As they approached, docking ports emerged from the station's surface, perfectly sized for the newly transformed ships. With a soft shudder, Holt's ship connected to the station. The crew gasped as their consoles seamlessly integrated with the hybrid systems, creating an interface unlike anything they had ever seen. "Boarding party with me," Holt ordered, leading a team towards the airlock. As the doors slid open, they revealed a vast interior filled with pulsating organic technology. Dr. Voss, part of the boarding party, immediately activated her scanner. "Captain, the air is breathable, and these structures, they're a perfect blend of organic and technological components." As they ventured deeper into the station, holographic projections of the Donald Uma entity appeared, guiding them through vast laboratories and hybridium production facilities. "This station is capable of synthesizing hybridium on a massive scale," the entity explained. "It holds the key to solving resource scarcity for both human and Sheliak civilizations." While the boarding party explored, the immobilized Vorax fleet began to stir. Their bioorganic ships, exposed to the hybridium energy field, started to adapt and evolve. The Donald Uma entity, aware of this development, initiated a new phase of defense. Swarms of nanobots infused with hybridium energy deployed from the station surrounding the Vorax ships. "Captain," the tactical officer's voice came through Holt's comm, "the nanobots are interfacing with the Vorax ships. It appears to be an attempt at communication or integration." As Holt processed this information, he felt the station begin to move. The entity's voice echoed through the corridors. "We must journey to the heart of the affected region. The transformation of known space continues, and we must guide it." Holt looked at his crew, seeing the mixture of awe and perseverance on their faces. They were stepping into a new era of hybridization and cosmic exploration, with challenges and discoveries beyond imagination waiting ahead. The hybrid station surged forward, propelling itself through space with a grace that belied its massive size. Captain Holt felt the subtle vibrations through the deck as the structure reconfigured itself, adapting to its new purpose and occupants. "Dr. Voss, status report," Holt called out, his eyes scanning the holographic displays that now filled the air around him. The scientist looked up from her console, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of hybridium energy. "The integration of our systems with the station's technology is proceeding faster than anticipated, Captain. The Donald Uma entity is facilitating the process, guiding the nanobots as they reshape our equipment." As if on cue, a swarm of microscopic machines flowed across the bridge, their movements creating intricate patterns in the air. Consoles morphed and expanded, interfaces becoming more intuitive and responsive. Crew members gasped in awe as walls shifted, creating new workstations tailored to their specific needs. "Fascinating," Dr. Voss murmured, her fingers dancing over her reconfigured console. "Captain, I've made a breakthrough in hybridium synthesis. With the station's advanced facilities, I've managed to create a stabilized form of Uma's milk." Holt raised an eyebrow. "Stabilized? What are the implications?" "I'm calling it stabilized hybridium lactate, or SHL, Voss explained, pulling up a molecular model on the main view screen. "It retains all the beneficial properties of the original substance, but eliminates the risk of uncontrolled mutations. We can now produce it safely and in large quantities." As the crew absorbed this news, a proximity alert chimed. The tactical officer's voice cut through the hum of activity. "Sir, the Vorax fleet, it's changing." All eyes turned to the external view. The once fearsome bioorganic ships of the Vorax were undergoing a startling transformation. Their hulls flowed like liquid metal, merging and reconfiguring into a vast, interconnected structure. "It's as if they're forming a single entity," Voss breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. The Donald Uma entity's voice resonated through the station. "The Vorax are evolving, adapting to the hybridium energy field. They are becoming a collective consciousness." Holt's mind raced with the implications. "We need a way to communicate with both the Donald Uma entity and this new Vorax collective. Lieutenant Chen, I want a specialized communication hub constructed immediately. Work with engineering to integrate it seamlessly into the station systems." As the crew set to work, the hybrid station continued its journey towards the heart of the affected region. They encountered a series of star systems transformed by the cosmic seeding phenomenon. Lush worlds teeming with new forms of life now orbited once barren stars. Dr. Voss coordinated the deployment of hybridium-powered probes to these systems. "The data we're receiving is incredible, Captain," she reported, her voice filled with excitement. "The rate of evolution on these worlds is off the charts. Some of these new life forms show potential for advanced cognition." The probes returned with samples which were quickly transferred to specially designed containment areas within the station. Voss and her team worked tirelessly, analyzing the new hybrid species. "Captain," Voss called out, her eyes gleaming with possibility, "I believe we can accelerate the evolution of these life forms using controlled exposure to SHL and hybridium rays. With your permission, I'd like to establish a research program." Holt considered the request carefully. "Granted, but with strict ethical guidelines and safety protocols in place. We're not playing God here, Doctor. We're nurturing potential." As the days passed, the crew members exposed to hybridium rays began to exhibit more pronounced changes. Bioluminescent patterns reminiscent of Uma's original form appeared on their skin, pulsing in sync with the station's energy field. Some reported the ability to interface directly with the station's systems through mere thought. Recognizing both the potential and the risks, Holt established a specialized training program. "We need to learn to control these new abilities," he announced to the affected crew members. "They could be the key to our success in this new frontier." The hybrid station's long-range sensors suddenly lit up with activity. A massive gravitational anomaly loomed ahead, its presence warping the very fabric of space-time around it. The Donald Uma entity's voice filled the bridge once more. "This anomaly may be the source of the original cosmic seeding phenomenon. It could hold the secrets of the ancient hybrid civilization's technological advancements." Holt's decision was immediate. "Alter course. We need to investigate this anomaly up close." As they approached, the newly evolved Vorax Collective transmitted a message. They're offered to assist, to use their bioorganic structure as a protective barrier around the station, marked a significant shift in the dynamics between the hybrid entities. Dr. Voss rushed onto the bridge, her face flushed with excitement. "Captain, I've made another breakthrough with SHL. We can use it as a medium for direct mental communication between different hybrid life forms. This could revolutionize our ability to integrate and understand each other." The hybrid station began to reconfigure its outer hull as they neared the anomaly. Massive energy collectors extended outward, ready to absorb and analyze the unknown forces emanating from the phenomenon. "All non-essential personnel to secure locations," Holt ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Prepare for potential gravitational disturbances." As the hybrid station poised on the brink of this momentous encounter, Holt gazed out at the swirling energies of the anomaly. The combined efforts of his crew, the Donald Uma entity, and the Vorax Collective had brought them to this pivotal moment of discovery. Whatever secrets lay hidden within the gravitational anomaly, Holt knew that unraveling them would shape the future of hybrid civilization in the transformed galaxy. The energy collectors began to hum with power, reaching out towards the unknown. Holt took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the console. "Take us in," he commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's see what the universe has in store for us." Us. The hybrid station surged forward, its energy collectors extending to their full length as they approached the swirling gravitational anomaly. Captain Holt gripped the edges of his console, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. "All systems to maximum power," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Brace for intense gravitational forces." The station shuddered as it made contact with the anomaly's outer edge. Visible ripples cascaded across its surface, the hybridium-infused hull straining against the immense pressure. In the main laboratory, Dr. Ilara Voss worked feverishly, her fingers dancing across the reconfigured console. "Initiating large-scale SHL production," she announced over the comms. "Routing it through the new conduits now." The stabilized hybridium lactate flowed through the station's veins like liquid starlight. As it permeated the structure, crew members felt a surge of strength and resilience. Lieutenant Chen gasped as his vision sharpened. the world around him coming into hyperfocus. At the station's core, the Donald Uma entity pulsed with newfound energy. Its consciousness merged with a massive data processing array, decoding the complex information contained within the gravitational waves. Captain, the entity's voice resonated through the command center. We're receiving fragments of the ancient hybrid civilization's history. The technological advancements, they're beyond anything we've imagined. Suddenly, the station lurched violently. Warning klaxons blared as structural integrity alarms flashed across every screen. Gravitational forces intensifying, the tactical officer shouted. We're experiencing severe strain on all decks. Before Holt could respond, the view screen lit up with a transmission from the Vorax Collective. Their once fearsome bioorganic structure had transformed into a protective web, enveloping the station and distributing the gravitational load. Unexpected, Holt murmured, a hint of admiration in his voice. But welcome. Status report on station integrity? Holding steady, sir, came the reply. The Vorax's assistance is proving crucial. In the central chamber, the walls shimmered and became translucent, revealing a swirling vortex of energy and information. Holographic images flickered to life, depicting scenes from the ancient hybrid civilization's past. Dr. Mira Howard, the station's lead xenoarchaeologist, stepped forward in awe. Captain, she breathed, her eyes wide, we need to document this immediately. The historical significance... Agreed, Holt nodded. Assemble your team, Doctor. I want every frame analyzed and cataloged. As Howard's team set to work, Dr. Voss's voice crackled over the comms. Captain, you need to see this. The Accelerated Evolution Program, it's yielding unexpected results. Holt made his way to the containment area, where he found Voss standing before a group of bizarre creatures. Part plant, part animal. They moved with surprising grace, responding to simple commands from the research team. They developed rudimentary intelligence in a matter of hours, Voss explained, her voice filled with excitement and a hint of trepidation. And they're showing signs of empathic abilities. Before Holt could respond, the station shuddered again. This time the vibration was accompanied by a surge of energy that seemed to emanate from the very core of the structure. Emergency protocol initiated, the Donald Uma entity announced, rerouting excess energy to the hybridium crystal matrix. In the heart of the station, a newly formed crystal pulsed with otherworldly light. The energy flowed into it, creating a dazzling display of color and motion. Crew members throughout the station gasped as the light washed over them. Those exposed to SHL felt a sudden surge in their hybrid abilities. Ensign Rodriguez stared in disbelief as a datapad floated inches above his outstretched hand. Telekinesis? He whispered, his voice a mix of fear and wonder. In the command center, Lieutenant Ayana Tejada clutched her head, overwhelmed by a series of rapid-fire visions. Captain, she called out, her voice strained. I think I'm seeing the future. Holt's mind raced, processing the implications of these new developments. Lieutenant Kovex, he called out to his Sheliak officer, I'm putting you in charge of a new division. Monitor and manage these evolving abilities. We need to understand what's happening to our people. As Kovex acknowledged the order, the view screen flared to life once more. The Vorax Collective, still maintaining its protective field, began to pulse in rhythm with the hybridium crystal matrix. Before the astonished eyes of the crew, the collective split into smaller humanoid units, each maintaining a telepathic link with the others. Dr. Voss's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, the gravitational anomaly is collapsing. There's a massive surge of temporal energy coming from its core. Holt's decision was instantaneous. Maintain position, he ordered, his voice firm. Dr. Voss, reconfigure the energy collectors. If we can harness that temporal energy. The order was barely given when the surge hit. For a heart-stopping moment, the entire station existed in multiple time streams simultaneously. Crew members reeled from disorienting visions of possible futures and alternate paths. As reality stabilized, the changes were immediately apparent. In the botanical labs, plants grew at an exponential rate, vines and flowers bursting forth in a riot of color. In other sections, crew members reported time flowing at a crawl, seconds stretching into subjective hours. Dr. Voss, her hair disheveled and eyes wild with excitement, burst onto the bridge. Captain, the SHL, it's changed. It's become chronoreactive. We can manipulate localized time fields. As the hybrid station emerged from the collapsing anomaly, its structure forever altered by the encounter, Captain Holt surveyed his crew. Each face showed a mix of exhaustion, wonder, and willpower. Full assessment of the station's condition and crew status, he ordered, his voice calm despite the turmoil of the past hours. And prepare for the next phase of our journey. The station's engines hummed to life, propelling them further into uncharted hybrid space. The newly acquired temporal energy and the evolved temporal hybridium lactate promised untold possibilities. As they ventured forth, the boundaries of hybrid civilization stretched before them, a frontier of limitless potential waiting to be explored. The hybrid station pulsed with newfound energy as it emerged from the collapsing anomaly, its structure forever altered by the encounter. Captain Holt's voice cut through the lingering chaos on the bridge. Full assessment of the station's condition and crew status, he ordered, his tone steady despite the turmoil of the past hours. And prepare for the next phase of our journey. As the initial shock subsided, the true extent of the changes became apparent. Lieutenant Chen, his eyes still adjusting to his enhanced vision, reported, "Sir, we're detecting significant structural alterations throughout the station. Some areas are experiencing accelerated time flow, while others appear to be in a state of temporal deceleration." Dr. Ilara Voss burst onto the bridge, her hair disheveled and eyes wild with excitement. "Captain, the SHL, it's changed. It's become chronoreactive. We can manipulate localized time fields." Holt nodded, absorbing the information. "Dr. Voss, I want you to focus on studying this new temporal hybridium lactate. We need to understand its properties and potential applications." As Voss hurried back to the main laboratory, the Donald Uma entity's voice resonated through the command center. "Captain, we are initiating a reconfiguration process to adapt to the temporal distortions. The station's interior will shift to accommodate the varying time flow rates." The crew watched in awe as walls seemed to ripple and reform, creating distinct zones throughout the structure. Holt tapped his comm badge. "All personnel, remain calm and stay in your current locations until we've completed a full assessment of these changes." Lieutenant Zarakivix approached the captain, her normally stoic Shellyak features betraying a hint of concern. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to establish a series of testing chambers to evaluate the extent of the crew's enhanced abilities." Holt nodded. "Granted, Lieutenant. Set up your division and begin assessments immediately. We need to understand what's happening to our people." In the Xenoarchaeology lab, Dr. Mira Howard and her team worked feverishly to catalog the wealth of historical data revealed during their encounter with the gravitational anomaly. Howard's eyes widened as she pieced together fragments of information. "This is incredible," she murmured. "An ancient hybrid civilization that mastered temporal manipulation. They used it for rapid terraforming and interstellar travel." Meanwhile, in the botanical labs, researchers gasped as they witnessed plants growing at an exponential rate. Vines twisted and curled, flowers bloomed and withered in a matter of seconds. Dr. Callum Evans, the lead botanist, frantically recorded data as he shouted into his comm, "Medical team to the hydroponics section. We need to monitor for potential radiation exposure." In the main laboratory, Dr. Voss worked tirelessly, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she analyzed the properties of the newly formed temporal hybridium lactate. "Incredible," she breathed, watching as a drop of THL caused a small temporal bubble to form around a test object. "With this, we could potentially control time itself within localized fields." Captain Holt, recognizing the need for a more structured approach to managing the evolving situation, called a meeting of key personnel. As they gathered in the newly formed central chamber, its walls shimmering with temporal energy, Holt addressed the group. "We're entering uncharted territory, both literally and figuratively. I'm establishing a hybrid council to oversee the development and application of our new technologies." The council members nodded in agreement, each acutely aware of the responsibility now resting on their shoulders. Dr. Voss stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with possibilities. Captain, I believe we can develop a THL infusion system to distribute the compound throughout specific sections of the station. This could allow us to control time flow for various purposes, accelerated plant growth, medical stasis, even rapid prototyping of new technologies. As the Council debated the potential applications and risks of THL technology, Lieutenant Commander Ryak entered the chamber, his expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. Sir, the Vorax Collective has changed. They've split into smaller humanoid units, and they're requesting to integrate more closely with our crew. Holt raised an eyebrow, considering the implications. Interesting. Have them join our research teams. Their unique perspective could prove invaluable. As the meeting concluded, the hybrid station hummed with renewed purpose. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Koda, a Sheliak expert in hybrid technology, began drafting plans for a specialized THL reactor. The device, once completed, could potentially harness and amplify temporal energy on an unprecedented scale. Dr. Voss, working alongside a team of Vorax researchers, made a startling breakthrough in understanding the cosmic seeding phenomenon. The gravitational anomaly, she explained to Captain Holt, her voice filled with awe. It's a nexus point for multiple timelines. It periodically releases bursts of temporally charged energy, catalyzing rapid evolution and terraforming. As the implications of this discovery sank in, the station's long-range sensors detected a new phenomenon. Lieutenant Chen's voice rang out across the bridge. Captain, we're picking up pockets of temporally unstable space forming around the station. They're creating localized time distortions. Holt's mind raced, processing the new threat. Dr. Voss, we need a solution. These distortions could jeopardize our entire mission. Voss's response was immediate, her tone confident despite the challenge ahead. A network of THL beacons, she proposed. We can use them to stabilize the temporal fields around the station. As the engineering team began modifying shuttlecraft with THL-powered engines to deploy the beacons, Captain Holt stood at the viewport, gazing out at the shimmering, distorted space surrounding the station. The hybrid expedition stood on the brink of a new era, poised to unlock the secrets of time itself. Yet with each new discovery, the stakes grew higher, and the line between progress and catastrophe grew ever thinner. The THL reactor neared completion, its pulsing core a testament to the incredible strides made in hybrid technology. As Captain Holt watched the first THL beacon launch into the temporal maelstrom surrounding the station, he couldn't help but wonder what new challenges and marvels awaited them in the transformed galaxy. Hybrid space. As the station's engines propelled them forward, the newly acquired temporal energy and evolved temporal hybridium lactate promised untold possibilities. Captain Holt's comm badge chirped urgently, interrupting his contemplation. Captain, this is Lieutenant Commander Ryak. We've made an extraordinary discovery. Holt tapped his badge. Go ahead, Commander. Sir, we've located a planet with an advanced ecosystem. The life forms here, they're hybrids showing signs of emerging sentience. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. The captain's eyes widened. Plot a course immediately. We're redirecting to investigate. As the hybrid station altered its trajectory, Dr. Ilara Voss burst into the command center, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Captain, I've done it. I've created a concentrated form of THL. I'm calling it temporal essence. Holt raised an eyebrow. What can it do, Doctor? It can temporarily synchronize the biological rhythms of different species, Voss explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. This could revolutionize our ability to communicate with other life forms, including the hybrids Ryak's team discovered. As they approached the planet, dubbed Eden Prime by the expedition team, Holt assembled a diverse landing party. Dr. Voss, Lieutenant Zara Kovacs, and a Vorax specialist named Zar prepared to descend in a shuttle equipped with THL-powered shielding. The shuttle pierced Eden Prime's atmosphere, revealing a landscape of otherworldly beauty. Crystalline structures jutted from the ground, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to bend the very fabric of time around them. As they touched down, the team encountered their first fluoromorph, a being that appeared to be a seamless blend of plant and animal characteristics. Its body undulated with a grace that defied conventional physics, leaves and tendrils intertwining with what looked like fur and scales. Dr. Voss approached cautiously, a vial of temporal essence in hand. She uncapped it, releasing a shimmering mist that enveloped both her and the fluoromorph. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a connection sparked between their minds. Images flooded Voss's consciousness. The rapid evolution of the fluoromorphs, their symbiotic relationship with the temporally charged ecosystem, and a sense of collective awareness that spanned the entire planet. Back on the station, Chief Engineer Coda made the final adjustments to the THL reactor. As he initiated the startup sequence, the reactor core pulsed with brilliant energy. A temporal field expanded outward, enveloping the station and stretching toward Eden Prime. On the planet's surface, the landing party watched in awe as the ecosystem around them began to change at an accelerated rate. Plants grew and withered in seconds, while fluoromorphs evolved before their eyes, developing new appendages and abilities. "Captain," Lieutenant Kvex's voice crackled over the comm, "the temporal field is affecting Eden Prime. We need to abort the mission immediately." Holt's response was instant. "Get back to the shuttle now. That's an order." As the team scrambled to comply, they found their path blocked by a group of rapidly evolving fluoromorphs. The beings' movements were erratic, their forms shifting and changing as they absorbed the intensified temporal energies. Lieutenant Kvex stepped forward, her hybrid abilities heightened by the surrounding temporal flux. She focused her mind, creating a localized bubble of stable time around the shuttle. "Everyone move!" she shouted, her voice strained with effort. The team sprinted through the temporal bubble, the world outside a blur of accelerated time. They barely made it into the shuttle before Kvex's concentration faltered, the bubble collapsing as they sealed the hatch. As the shuttle ascended, Dr. Voss monitored the crew's vital signs. "Captain," she reported, her voice tinged with concern, "exposure to the concentrated temporal energies has triggered further changes in our hybrid physiology. We need to establish a quarantine protocol immediately." The shuttle docked, and Holt met the team in the airlock, his face grim. "Medical team to quarantine bay," he ordered. "I want full scans and containment procedures in place." In the following hours, the true extent of the changes became apparent. Some crew members developed precognitive abilities, glimpsing potential futures that shifted with each decision made. Others displayed accelerated healing, their bodies regenerating at an astonishing rate. The Vorax Collective, intrigued by the developments on Eden Prime, approached Captain Holt with a proposal. "We wish to establish a joint research initiative," Czar stated, his multiple voices blending into one. "The fluoromorphs represent a unique evolutionary path that could provide invaluable insights into the nature of hybrid existence." Holt nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities and potential dangers. "Agreed. Assemble a team of human, Shellyak, and Vorax scientists. We'll set up long-term observation protocols for Eden Prime." As the station prepared for extended operations near the planet, the sensors suddenly lit up with urgent warnings. Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the background noise. "Captain, we're detecting a massive energy signature approaching from the edge of the affected region. It matches the original cosmic seeding phenomenon." Holt's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. Another cosmic seeding event could reshape the entire galaxy once again, with untold consequences for all life within it. He tapped his comm badge. "All senior staff and members of the Hybrid Council report to the Central Chamber immediately. We have a situation." As the Hybrid Station's leaders gathered, the view screen displayed the approaching energy signature, a roiling mass of temporal energy that dwarfed anything they had encountered before. The fate of Eden Prime, the transformed galaxy, and perhaps the very nature of time itself hung in the balance. Holt surveyed the faces of his crew, each bearing the marks of their hybrid transformation and the weight of the challenges ahead. With a deep breath, he prepared to outline their most ambitious and dangerous plan yet, one that would push the limits of their new abilities and technologies to their very limits. Captain Holt's gaze swept across the faces of his assembled crew, their expressions a mixture of tenacity and trepidation. The view screen loomed behind him, displaying the approaching cosmic seeding phenomenon, a churning maelstrom of temporal energy that threatened to reshape their reality once more. "We have one chance," Holt said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Our hybrid technology and newfound abilities are our only hope of weathering this storm." As if on cue, the station shuddered, its temporal shields straining against the immense energy. Alarms blared, and the lighting flickered ominously. "All non-essential personnel evacuate to the designated safe zones," Holt ordered. "The rest of you to your stations. We're going to need every ounce of skill and innovation we possess." The hybrid crew sprang into action, their movements fluid and purposeful. Dr. Voss and her team rushed to the medical bay, preparing for any potential casualties. Lieutenant Kovex coordinated with the engineering crew, her precognitive abilities allowing her to anticipate and prevent system failures before they occurred. In the heart of the station, Chief Engineer Coda worked feverishly to stabilize the THL reactor. His hands flew across the controls, making micro-adjustments to keep the delicate balance of temporal energies in check. Suddenly, the air in the reactor room shimmered, and a familiar yet transformed figure materialized. It was the merged Donald Uma entity, their body pulsing with an otherworldly light. "We can help," they spoke in unison, their voices resonating with newfound power. Without waiting for a response, they approached the reactor core, placing their hands on its surface. Coda watched in awe as the entity's hybrid physiology interfaced directly with the THL reactor. Energy flowed between them, creating a feedback loop of temporal manipulation that far surpassed anything their technology could achieve alone. On the bridge, Captain Holt received Coda's urgent communication. "Sir, the Donald Uma entity is controlling the reactor. They're channeling the temporal energies with incredible precision." Before Holt could respond, the cosmic wave struck. The view screen exploded in a blinding display of light and color, forcing the crew to shield their eyes. The station groaned under the strain, but held firm. In the reactor room, the Donald Uma entity's form became translucent, merging with the energy flowing through the core. Their consciousness expanded, touching every corner of the station and reaching out to Eden Prime below. Instead of destruction, a miraculous transformation began to unfold. The incoming energies harmonized with the existing temporal field, creating a cascading effect of rapid but controlled evolution throughout the shielded area. On Eden Prime, Dr. Voss watched through the station's sensors as the fluoromorphs underwent a startling metamorphosis. Their plant-animal hybrid forms shifted and changed, evolving into bioluminescent beings of startling beauty and complexity. "Captain," Voss called out, her voice filled with wonder, "the fluoromorphs, they're evolving before our eyes. This new species, it's a perfect fusion of all the hybrid elements we've encountered." As the cosmic wave passed, the station's systems began to stabilize. The Donald Uma entity slowly separated from the reactor core, their forms solidifying once more. They turned to face Coda, their eyes glowing with newfound knowledge. "We understand now," they said, their voices filled with awe. "The cosmic seeding, it's not random. It's a process initiated by ancient hybrid beings. They seek to foster new life across the galaxy." Captain Holt ordered an immediate assessment of the aftermath. Scans revealed that Eden Prime had become a temporal nexus, its surface a patchwork of ecosystems representing different evolutionary stages, all coexisting in perfect harmony. As the crew marveled at the transformation around them, Holt realized that they stood at the threshold of a new era. The hybrid expedition that had begun with a simple taste of alien milk had led them to this moment, a turning point in galactic history. With a deep breath, he tapped his comm badge. "All senior staff and council members, report to the central chamber. It's time to decide our next steps in this brave new galaxy." As the hybrid leaders gathered once more, the Donald Uma entity shared their expanded understanding of the cosmic seeding phenomenon. The implications were staggering. They were part of a grand design, a cosmic experiment in life and evolution. Dr. Voss, her body now permanently altered by prolonged THL exposure, stepped forward. Captain, I volunteer to lead a research team on Eden Prime. We need to study these temporal properties up close and establish communication with the evolved fluoromorphs. Holt nodded, recognizing the importance of this mission. Agreed, Doctor. But we'll need to establish more than just a research outpost. This station, our home, it's become something more. He turned to address the entire group, his voice filled with conviction. We've been given an opportunity and a responsibility to foster this new hybrid galaxy, to protect and guide emerging civilizations. I propose we establish a permanent presence here, a nexus for all hybrid species to come together and learn from one another. As the council debated the details of this ambitious plan, Lieutenant Zara Quebec's eyes suddenly unfocused, her precognitive abilities kicking in. She saw flashes of a future filled with possibility, hybrid worlds thriving, new species emerging, and a galactic community built on cooperation and shared understanding. The Donald Uma entity, sensing her vision, smiled. It is time, they said, their voices resonating with purpose. Time to send a message across the stars, to call others like us. The era of division is ending. The age of hybrid harmony is about to begin.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.